Hello, everyone, and welcome back to RHAP. I am here today with a deep dive, another deep dive, the deep dive of the season. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and with me to talk through her winning game is Chelsie. How you doing, Chelsie?
I am doing much better now that I'm talking to you. I'm excited. I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited. So let's get into this.
Yes, Chelsie was just telling me that she listened to the Quinn deep dive already.
Sure did. All 5 hours. And oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. What a ride.
So I've already taken 5 hours of her time. So we're gonna
we are not gonna go that long. No.
So there's obviously a lot to talk about. A very dominant winning game. And I think that a lot of people are curious about what your thought process was throughout the season, how you managed to do some of the things that you did. And then, you know, I'm sure you've been asked a million times, but like, did you really switch your vote at the last second?
Yes. There's a lot of questions a lot of things I like to clear up.
Yes. Perfect. All right. Well, let's get into it then. Chelsie, you were a fan of the show before you played, which is not uncommon for winners, I will say. How much of the show had you seen? When did you start watching? Like, what's your story with Big Brother?
Yeah, so I started watching Big Brother around season 10, but the most memorable season was Rachel and Brennan's. That's the one where it got really spicy for me and my family. So since their season, I've been nonstop every season watching the show. Now, I was not a live feeder. I was just a Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday girl. Every now and then I pop into live feeds when I find out live feeds kind of get a sneak peek of the episodes before they come out. So, but I watched pretty religiously since Rachel and Brennan's season up until the season that I was on. So I had a pretty good awareness of how the game went before I decided to even apply.
Did you do any like extra research? Like, when did you decide you wanted to be on the show?
So I definitely did a ton of extra research. Fun fact, I was actually at one of my coworkers, their kid's birthday party, and a girl that was there was on Survivor, and we were talking about her Survivor season. She was on season 35, Ali, and her and I are friends. So we're talking, and I'm asking 18 million questions. And I said, hey, I don't really watch Survivor, and I might get like, dragged through the mud for that, but I don't really watch Survivor, but I do watch Big Brother. And she said, you'd be perfect for that. You should apply. I was like, whatever. That was last summer. In January, she sends me a screenshot of their Instagram story and says, it's time, apply. So I literally pulled up my laptop in this spot, pressed record, and talked for 3 minutes. Lo and behold, a week later, I'm getting a phone call, and I was like, oh, this is actually, I didn't apply with the thought of I was going to be on the show. I applied with like, they're going to see thousands of them. If they pick me, whatever. If they don't, whatever, keep it pushing. I didn't know I was going to get a phone call a week. It was actually not, I got on my Apple Watch. I heard a ding, and I looked at it, and it was from a producer. I said, is this spam? Is this real life? So I called immediately, like, hold on. Me? She said, I saw your video, and would you like to have a chat further? I'm like, that's not even a question. So that's kind of how my process, that was the first time I've ever applied to any type of show. So this whole process was very, very brand new, and I didn't think that I would get on the show, let alone win. So this is kind of insane. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder how many people just don't answer their phone because they're like, oh, that's spam.
Yes, I'm so glad that I decided to respond because I'm terrible with my phone. I am so bad, even with people I know. So I'm trying to grow in that area of life. So when I saw this, I'm like, I'm just gonna respond and see if this is real, and I'm glad I did.
Listen, if you find a way to grow in that area of life, you gotta let me know because
I'm so bad. You should see my phone now. It's just not pretty.
Let me tell you, it gets worse now that you're like a person online. You know what I mean?
I get so overwhelmed. So I'm over it already. I was already a bad responder. So please give me all the grace in the world now because I will be worse. I'm trying
Yes.
my best.
Yes. Listen, it's just a thing. Not everyone has strengths in all areas.
That's my weakness.
Yeah.
So allow me to grow. Please allow me to grow.
Exactly. Okay, so you get on the show. You mentioned some research. How did you prep
Oh,
when you
yes.
knew you were getting on?
So when I got that phone call, I immediately started to do my research. So I was going on YouTube looking at casting process videos, just so I can be aware of even the process before getting in the house, because they called January and you're not getting into the house until July. So there's 6 months that I'm like, what is going on? So I wanted an awareness of how the process was going. And then I watched videos of former house guests of like how to pack, how to prepare, all of the things. But I didn't really watch like any strategy videos of, how to go on and win Big Brother or things to. I just really looked at how to pack. That was my biggest concern.
Listen, those are like some logistics that go a little bit underreported, I think.
They do. To pack, let me just say, you only get one suitcase for 3 months. That was my biggest concern
It's
of
wild.
the whole summer. That was a bit. It wasn't. I almost forgot in the process that wow, I'll be living with 16 different people. I was just like, what outfits do I bring? So that was what I looked up a lot, and then sequester periods, all of that, just to mentally prepare. But going into it, because I had an awareness of how the show operated, I tried to prepare myself for an AI twist because I knew that I saw the comments on Instagram. That was very interesting to look at Instagram posting about the show, knowing I could possibly be on it. So I'm looking like, what do people think? And so I'm preparing mentally for that, for some type of twist. But I'm also preparing for how do I play the best social game? I knew that off the bat. Like, if when people see me in person, the first thing they say is you're so small. And I'm like, well, dang, how did TV make me look? Oh my God. So I am not the most athletic. I am not the strongest or have the best endurance. So I prepared mostly for how do I come in with the best social game? Really, how do I have some interpersonal skills? How do I build relationships with people that look different than me? So that's the research that I did, was people skill, social skill research, not necessarily, looking at previous house guests. Because you see, season to season, it is so very different because the people make up the season. So if you could master people skills, then you can navigate whatever season you're on. And that's how I decided to prep. I read books on how to communicate with different personalities. So I did all the unorthodox. I studied humans before getting on the show, and I honestly think that helped me.
I think that's smart. I think that what we have discovered is that you need to have a baseline level of knowledge about the show. Otherwise, you can really get taken advantage of, Mackenzie. And so sorry, I don't know what happened there. And so once you have that, like people skills is very important.
Yes, but a base level, I already had that. I had
Exactly.
13 years or whatever of knowledge of that. So I knew how it was built on manipulation, deceit. Like I knew the type of game. So that was the least of my concerns. My concerns was then how do you navigate the complexities of living with humans for a whole month. So, but you're right. If you go, that was the interesting part of the season. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but we had half were recruits, half were applicants. So you have 8 people who came into the show who were invited, and some didn't necessarily do their research on the type of show they were going on. And I think it in a lot of ways screwed them over because they go into it expecting the game to just be a reality show where you just play some games and have fun, not knowing this is a game built on backstabbing and being sneaky and conniving. And so their lack of studying, just everybody could get Paramount Plus. It's not like I cheated, but their lack of studying, I just think benefited me in the long run. And I'm grateful for it.
So you get on the show. Any other interesting little tidbits from your time before, maybe when you were sequestered or coming on stage?
Oh, so I don't know if it was just me, but I didn't feel like I was on the show until I literally walked into those doors. And I'm like, okay, I'm actually here. It's so surreal. Um, the best, there's not a lot of tidbits, but like the first I say 5 days are so overwhelming. Like so overwhelming. From long days, long shooting days, and then you go for an unnamed amount of time not talking to humans or interacting, and then you're thrust into this environment where you're doing nothing but that. So during sequester, I probably should have done a better job at trying to like mentally prepare myself to be overloaded with humans who all had very strong person. I don't know why I didn't take that into account. So I lost my voice for the first 2 weeks, and you probably saw little clips of that.
Mhm.
So when you can't talk in the Big Brother house and I was downgraded, it just took a mental toll. So I would say before going on the show, therapy. I should have went to therapy. That's what I should have did. That's the tidbit, because our season was just took me through the ringer with some of the characters on it, but it's hard to prepare when you don't know what you're walking into or who you're going to be living with. So it's just one of those where you like throw up a hope, wish, and a prayer and survive, honestly.
Yeah, I just talked to Quinn, and we talked about. I mean, Quinn basically had the dream start to a season.
Yes.
He gets this massively overpowered, broken superpower. He's being invited into like every alliance. Everybody loves him.
Yes.
And you start off, not that everyone didn't love you, but like you start off immediately downgraded. This comes because of the Ainsley twist. You vote against her joining
Yeah.
the game.
Yeah.
Because
What?
obviously you would.
What? Another person to beat through? I was trying to be. I didn't come on Big Brother to try to be, nice. I came on Big Brother to win. And it's like, yeah, I would fulfill another person's dream, but like it would make it harder for me to fulfill mine. So I've never pressed a button so fast in my life. I immediately, when the video came on, I knew I was gonna say no, but I didn't know that I would suck at the first competition and lose. That was unexpected.
What do you think happened there? Like why? Because you ultimately end up winning quite a lot of competitions
Yeah.
by the end, but not the greatest start competitively.
I don't. Okay, so I didn't sleep. I lost because I didn't listen to the directions. That's why I lost. It was a me problem for sure. However, there are other layers. I had been up for 32 hours by that point. I am overstimulated. Like, I was so excited being on
Mm-hmm.
Big Brother. So there's so much going on behind the scenes that you don't see. So I had already been on set for hours before we even competed. So there's just so much. I'm exhausted. And then I walk into this arena and it's the first time hearing Julie's voice. So I freak out. Julie's talking to me, trying to explain the rules of the game. And I'm just like, not really paying that much attention. I knew when Ainsley shared, like, these are the rules of the game if you say yes or no. I knew that tidbit. So I was like, okay, I'll have to, mix up some words or put words together and hit a button. That is how I went into the competition. So the plug aspect, plugging in the plug, it was just kind of through one ear, not the other, because I was so infatuated with Julie, the fact that I'm talking to her. So it was in that moment I realized, playing the game, I'm like, I know I have all of these right. I'm looking at the board and I see this big plug on the floor, and I'm like, I think that was part of this game. I plug it in, press the button, and it was in that moment I told myself, whatever competition you play moving forward, no matter who's giving you the instructions, listen. And I decided to do that. And it's crazy when you listen how it takes you further in life. I'm so frustrated with life. So stupid. Ugh.
Did you know how close the upgrade power was for Mackenzie? It was actually a big controversy at the time because people felt that watching it didn't seem like she was the fastest, and they felt like there was something like happening going like the like based on I don't even remember what it was, but I remember I had to go back and like frame by frame do a timer to prove that Mackenzie did actually beat out, I think it might have been
Do people
Joseph.
think it was rigged?
People always think it's rigged, but
Yeah.
like, yeah, like that something happened, and like that maybe there was an error and she accidentally won when she shouldn't have, because Joseph clearly, you know, hit the buttons faster. But it was a whole thing.
Well, like, if you see Mackenzie in real life, she's like 8 feet tall. So it takes her one step to get from. So I only watched 2 episodes. I've only watched. So you you might reveal a lot to me that I have no idea about. But I saw those. I saw her compete, and she needs to take just one step to get from one button to the next. So it may seem like she was going slow, but she didn't need to move as much. She's so long.
That was exactly it. That's exactly how it happened. Yeah, it seemed like she took longer because she, I think, took longer at the buttons, but she got there so much faster.
All she had to do was this, really, and she's got all 4 buttons.
Exactly.
So that made sense to me. I didn't know it was a controversy though. But I also didn't know they both had the same amount of things correct, that she was just faster. I had no idea.
And it was a very tight margin. And then of course there's another very tight margin when she beats out Rubina to survive. That was also fractions of a second, also likely due to her height.
Yeah, which that's also one thing I found out through listening to a podcast, that she barely beat Rubina. So I'm thinking she's like winning by a landslide.
Wait till you watch the episode.
Imagine if Joseph would have won that first. First of all, imagine. But second of all, the season would be so different. His Dr. Will plan would be down the drain. Just off the bat.
Yeah, you know that doctor guy from the I think there was a guy called Will or something. I think he didn't win any competitions.
I knew the Joker was a super fan before that. So when he's trying to give me this spiel, you know, Doctor, I'm like, I watched the show too. Like, I'm not a fake super fan. I'm public about it. So I clocked that immediately, but I didn't know until I saw that episode that they had the same amount. And even Cedric surprised me in his loss, that he actually went fast. But it was the fact that he dropped his thing in the wrong disc. He would have breezed through that, to be honest.
Yeah, I was a little bit like that. I mean, I get it, but like, I think Cedric honestly performed the best in that competition. He was just the slowest to get to that point, but he got the furthest.
He got the furthest. And this is a side note. I think Brooklyn, because I watched these episodes with Brooklyn, I almost died laughing at T-Core trying to do that. I was like, I am so glad that wasn't me, because T-Core looked like it looked like the competition was painful for her. So it was just very fun to watch. So the season was interesting.
I haven't gone back to watch since like getting to know the people. Like, now thinking about it, it would be so funny to watch T-Core do that.
It was hilarious.
Like, knowing T-Core.
No, exactly. So yeah, that was that.
So you get downgraded. You are now wearing a massive costume, which was very funny in the eviction episode. I'm sure you noticed. That's blocking the cameras at various points. You also have no vote. And like, there are a lot of universes where this is devastating to a player, because no vote means you just don't have any power. You are an easy target, because it's like, if you have no other reason to nominate anybody, just nominate the 2 people in costumes who can't vote anyway. You know, like, there are lots of ways that this can work out poorly for you. Even if you don't get nominated, you're not a valuable person to campaign to or talk to, because you don't have a vote. So this is obviously, like, also a massively important time in the game, when people are making connections that will last for the entire season. Power structures are being formed. You had to be terrified.
Oh, I was shaking in my boots as soon as Ainsley rudely shared, because she could have shared that in private. She could have shared that we were downgraded. Like, Why she have to give the upgrades privately, but she have to share our, like, that was public humiliation. So she
Well,
could
there's,
have
I think
allowed
the
us,
costumes were public
as if
humiliation.
that wasn't enough. So she could have let us, share the news, but that's neither here nor there. So I honestly, I was shaking in my boots the moment I heard that, because number one, people were going like, we're the two worst players of 16 people, essentially at that time. And
Mhm.
so I didn't want people to think, because I also couldn't play, that I would not be an asset to them in the future. It's like, oh, even Joseph, ironically, was like, yeah, I was hesitant with bringing you into any alliances because you kind of prove that you can't compete. I was like, ooh, that's kind of like, I wonder how many other house guests perceive me that way. So I was nervous, but one thing that eased my mind was, as soon as, and I don't know if they showed this, I can't remember. As soon as I walked into the house, we were the first four, me, Angela, Chemo, and Tucker, I think. And we were exploring the house. Angela immediately was like trying to form a final two with me as we're in looking at the rooms. And I'm like, I don't even remember your name. So she's like, this feels good. And I'm like, okay. So I was nervous up until she won HOH, because I knew that she immediately kind of trusted me in that moment. So that kind of calmed my nerves up until the blow up happened. Because I was like, now anything is anything can happen in this house. But it calmed my nerves when she won HOH. But I was shaking in my boots. Also, what people don't know is that first week, people weren't really talking game with Cedric and I, because we couldn't vote. We couldn't do anything.
Mhm.
It was pointless to see where our head is at or all of the things. So yeah, I was shaking in my boots, but at the same time, uh, it revealed to me there's a lot of talk that was like, no, I don't think anybody would ever put you guys up. That's mean. That's cruel. You guys, can't do anything. In that moment, I'm like, this may be an emotionally led house. Because if
Mhm.
they played Big Brother, it probably was the least amount of blood. Hey, you guys get to finally compete in AI arena and prove yourself again, So probably would have been wise to put us up. But that's the moment I clocked, like, this might be a different type of season, and I'm grateful it was.
Yeah, and I think it's a testament to your social game too, because I
Mhm.
think that, like, you know, I think that it's easy to say, oh, well, we would never do that. That's very cruel, when it's a person that they like. But if it's a person that they don't really care
Don't
for,
like
it's like, that sucks for them.
it, exactly. And Cedric and I literally switched into high gear, like socially. That's all you had. All you had was to build relationships, to build trust, be vulnerable with people, and hope that them liking you will get you just by another week. So I knew that week, okay, socially, all I can do is talk. The difficult part was I lost my voice. So
Mhm.
I had double downgrade. I couldn't talk. My voice was shot. So I'm like, what an embarrassing thing. Like, one of the only milestones, I was like, just get past week one. Don't be the first one evicted. So it just wasn't looking good for me. But in that moment, I said, this is the time to be social. This is the time to build relationships. And that is what I did for 10 days and up until I won HOH.
So very early on, we were able to identify you as one of the players that was sort of like able to play all sides early on.
Mhm.
Like Quinn was doing that. Joseph was trying to do that, but ended up getting blown up by the end of that week. You were doing that. Cam was in the mix everywhere. Like, there were a few people. If you listen to the Quinn deep dive, you already know we do a stock watch podcast, which is where we rate the
Yes.
players every week, and then people can buy and sell shares of stocks of
Yeah.
you as a player. And you were either the highest or tied for the highest every single week except for two, which we'll talk
What were the
about.
two? What were the two
Uh,
weeks?
the 2 weeks were week two, but only slightly behind Chemo and T-Core, because they were kind of in a theoretical power position that they then kind of squandered.
Yeah.
And then week five, when you were on the block, when
Oh yeah.
Tucker was HOH. Yeah.
So what was it? That would be my question to you. What was it that you guys clocked? Because I didn't see, that was a surprise for me coming out of the Big Brother house. I didn't see the edit, still have not seen the full edit. I don't know how my game is being perceived, like, from the
Mm.
outside world. So what was it when I heard your deep dive with Quinn that there was only 2 weeks that I wasn't ranked the top? What was it early that y'all clocked where it showed Chelsie is in a good position? Because
I mean,
I'm genuinely confused.
well, what
Every
I will
week
tell
is
you is,
crazy. Not even Tucker?
no, certainly not Tucker.
I get it. But yeah, what was it?
I mean, I will say, I think, and it's honestly, it's sometimes it's hard for me to remember what was in an episode and what was on the feeds because
Yeah.
for me, like my job is the feeds, so it very much blends together. To my memory, I think that you were probably more of a standout on the feeds than the episodes for a little while until you break out eventually.
Okay.
So, which is not to say that you're like not in the episodes, but like I think probably the casual episode watcher audience didn't realize you were like the front runner mastermindy kind of player
Yeah.
until the second half at least of the season.
Yeah.
But for us early on, one of the things I was really impressed by was that you were in such a disadvantageous position, and yet were in such a good spot socially and structurally, which to me was an indication that like you had a lot of promise as a player. Because moving forward, when you're in a better position, like that means that you have the tools that you need to really succeed, which doesn't always pan out because some players are better when they're behind and then they get power and they
Yep. Yep.
and I think I was a little worried about about that in week 2 when you were HOH. Like, okay, like she almost put Cam on the block.
I did.
We'll
And
talk about
like,
it.
yeah. Just that's the whole thing.
But very early on, I think you stood out because you had the social connections to people. You were a fan of the show.
Yeah.
You operated like you can just tell who knows what they're doing in the house. And so very very early, it was like she knows what she's doing. She has the social capability. For a little while, then it was just like, is she an active enough player to succeed? And it took a couple of weeks where we were like, we're not sure yet.
Yeah.
And then once you survived week 5, you were pretty much just like the front runner all the way through. So
Which is crazy. Like everybody is like, not everybody, but a lot of people are like, how did you not know? Or you like, because I'm just playing to survive. Well, really to thrive in this game. I didn't want to have to play survival, but you're just trying to make it week to week to week. So I don't, when I came out of the house and I was in all of these press interviews, I was so overwhelmed. How does it feel that you're known for blah, 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 blah? I'm like, I didn't know that. So thank you for revealing that information to me. So that's so interesting. I can see structurally why after, especially after week 5, I think that's when Tucker left. I
yeah.
can see then
Or
why.
that was, you survived that week, and then I think Tucker survived. Let me see, week 6
Oh,
is when
week
Tucker
5 was my
left.
week that I was on the block.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you
Then
survive week 5, and then Tucker leaves the following week.
following week. After
So
that week,
yeah.
I felt like, okay, I feel like I can have a grip on this game, a really good grip. So, but that's week 5 is trauma. Day 38, I'll never forget. Never. Never.
So and I'm sure like we'll talk more too, like but I think that's very interesting. I think that in terms of what I've heard from players who have been very successful in the past, I do think a lot of them feel the same way that you did, where it's like they felt in the moment like, I'm just doing what I need to do to succeed, and then it happens and you're like, yes, and then people are like, how are you such a mastermind? And you're like, was I?
Yes.
I mean, I was doing some things, I guess, but
Yes.
and then it's, I think oftentimes the players who are in the moment thinking, haha, I'm such a mastermind, that like either have a downfall or like maybe don't win the jury vote. Like it doesn't actually tend to work as well for them. So that's interesting.
Exactly. And there were some who really thought that they were masterminds of the season. And at that time, before they were evicted, I was like, or ringleaders, I was like, how does anybody see the game in totality and really think that they're leading this? But I knew I was very strategic. I knew that I had social ties to almost everybody in the house, and that could and I'm evaluating every week how I am socially versus other house guests, and I'm evaluating relationships every week. So I knew I pretty much was in a good position relationally with the house versus other people. So I felt a little bit like I could be maneuver no matter what happened, but it wasn't until the second half. It wasn't until Tucker left where I was like, I think I could really string everybody. Like that's when
Mhm.
I became really confident as a player and even more strategic. First half, I'm like, be under the radar, don't bring too much attention to yourself. Then shifted into the next gear where I have a little bit more control over a smaller house.
I mean, and that tracks too, because that's, I mean, it's pretty much what we were saying is like, she is in such a good position. We were just worried at times, like, is she pushing hard enough in certain areas? And then once you did start pushing, the house just relented and it just all toppled down.
I know. I know. I was as much as other people were surprised watching, I was surprised playing.
Mm.
That some things I'm like, they believed me. They actually thought this was the best for that. I was shocked too. I would go back into the HOH room or back to my room and be like, did that actually just happen? So I was
Mhm.
surprised too. Let me just say, I worked hard, but I was surprised at how kind of influential I was or how influenced other people were with my words. So that was
Mhm.
shocking to live it.
All right, well, let's wrap up week one because obviously a lot happens with Angela and the collective and the low budget movie and the crazy eyes.
Uh, what? I I was so that was day 4, mind you. That was the
Mhm.
moment I said this is gonna be a very, very, very long summer. And I don't know if this is the show for me because what? Low budget. I didn't make it to that argument, like that part of the argument. So I watched it when I got out the house. I didn't hear the
Mm,
low budget. I
right.
came in like half and I missed the crazy eyes. I came like halfway through. So I walk into the kitchen and Matt looks like he's on the verge of tears, like his puppy just died. And Matt looks at me and I just say, don't get up. Just stay calm. So I was trying to on the side, alleviate some of the tension. But yeah, week 1 was just purely way worse than what's shown online, let me tell you. It was terrible to live through. I hated week 1. And that's trauma. I need to go to therapy for a year just for week 1 of being on Big Brother.
Listen, that is the nature of the show is that your trauma is our entertainment.
It
So
is. And y'all ate it up. So, oh God, I'm glad that was over. Yeah, week 1 was bad.
So, is it fair to say that like characterizing week one for you is kind of like keeping your options open because it felt like you had an in with the Matt crew, you had an
Yeah,
in with Angela and what was happening over there. You had the in with like Quinn and what he was doing,
hmm
and then eventually through all of that, the structure that eventually forms is the Pentagon within the collective, which really
yeah,
solidifies in week two.
yeah. Yeah, I was pretty much almost like fully not fully aligned, but in cahoots with every single person in the house. Now, the difference between as I just finished watching Quinn's deep dive, like I wasn't in a lot of final twos. I was in majority alliances, the collective and Pentagon. Those were the
Mm-hmm.
two. And the Pentagon was within the collective, so that helped me. So, but then I was in relationship with people outside the Pentagon that brought me in. So I was really protected on all fronts. The only alliance I was truly gonna bend over backwards for was the Pentagon. That was my ride or die. And you could see in the way I voted. You could see in the way I
Mm-hmm.
spoke. But I knew that, or so I thought, the Pentagon were protected. We got each other to the end. That's fine. I don't really need to let them in on how close I am also with Matt's side of the house. So I was essentially kind of playing the middle from the beginning, but I knew
Mm-hmm.
where my loyalty lied. So it did set me up well socially to have almost everybody wanting to work with me in the beginning.
So tell me more about the Pentagon, because it basically would have been the alliance driving the season if not for a couple of specific things like Quinn, and also the AI arena loss. But tell me about the formation and the structure and how you viewed it.
Let me set the record straight. Actually, I'm setting the record straight for Quinn. So and because this blows my mind how the Pentagon was viewed. So I remember I was in the HOH bathroom and Cam comes up to me. Cam's like, and I have had maybe a minute of conversation with this man. I don't know who he is, but I had already like just a level of comfortability with him off the bat. So I'm in the bathroom. Cam comes in. He's like, so what are we doing? And I'm like, what? He's like, okay, so I talked to Cedric. So Cam brings me in on like him and Cedric wanting to work with me. So Cedric is my microchip. We're already have some type of bond. So they felt like, okay, this feels comfortable. We have a conversation about us working together, but they're talking about who else should we bring into this. We all mutually agreed, like, hey, we think Quinn is dope. Like Quinn is super dope. I knew early on Quinn was like so nervous. And then I was like, oh my God, he's just like a little puppy that's scared. And I just wanted to wrap my arms around him. So I'm like, bring him in. I knew he was a super fan off the bat and his knowledge would be power. So I said, let's bring Quinn in. Then they asked me, or I think I may have pushed like, we need another woman or whatever. And so Brooklyn, I don't even know what it was about her that I was drawn to. But for me,
Married
I
mom
was
energy.
Yes. So that's what I want. Well, calm in the beginning, then it went kind of crazy. She was level-headed, very sweet, very poised and put together. And for me, I wanted to play the game with people who can control themselves. That's what I wanted to do. People who were level-headed, who were smart, and who weren't led by their emotions. That's the type of players I wanted to play with. Because with the twists and the turns and all that, if somebody can stay stable, you're in a good position. So that was the thought. So the boys went to go talk to Quinn. I went to go talk to Brooklyn. And then we got together. So there was never really like a hierarchy within the Pentagon. It was just us five. Let's have each other's back. Let's trust each other and make it to the end. So the fact that Quinn was skeptical about a final five, get this, a final five when there's still 16 people in the house is crazy to me. If you're in the bottom of a final five out of 16, that's not bad to me. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's not bad odds to be in the bottom five of 16. So I'm frustrated that Quinn didn't just like, I'm sure when he watched back, he saw like there wasn't necessarily a hierarchy. And I probably would have stuck close really to Quinn and Cedric, maybe Brooklyn. It depended relationally. I would have stuck with whoever. It was so fresh. I didn't have like a number one or number two at the time. So that could have been won over. And I ended up really liking Quinn over the season. So if he would have stuck true and didn't blow it up, I really would have been rocking with Quinn for a long time. But then I find out he blew up the Pentagon. No pun intended, if that's offensive, my bad. But he blew the Pentagon up. And I'm like, bruh, this could have been such a strong. And I kind of knew with the questions I was being asked in the DR about the Pentagon that it was kind of a huge, like a center point of the season at the time. I knew that because I was being asked a lot. So I'm like, this might be driving the direction or the center of the house right now. So if Quinn would have stuck to that, imagine. I was so frustrated. I was so stupid. But there was no hierarchy. It was literally, we like each other. Let's survive together.
Yeah, I mean, like looking at the consistency of that group, you know, I think that there's nobody outside of that group that poses a significant threat, I think, strategically to what you're able to do. You were also under the radar. Now, you know, would it have been the best thing in the world to go to 5 for Quinn in that group? like I'd personally be concerned about Cedric and Cam as physical threats, given the way
Mhm.
that Big Brother normally operates with endgame competitions,
Yes, for sure.
and the way that they approach me makes me think that they're a duo and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
like as I talked about with Quinn, yeah, there's probably another way, which is maybe holding on to the information until the right time, and then if you find a spot somewhere, you can do something. But it
So
happens.
frustrating. So it happens, whatever. It benefited me at the end. I can't be too mad.
Yeah.
But that was dumb. Pentagon for I thought we were in this for life.
He was the one that did that the most too. He was like Pentagon.
I was so frustrated. Pentagon, no. What Boo Quinn ruined something so good. So yeah,
uh,
Pentagon thoughts. Love him to death though.
All right, so Matt ends up going home. Obviously, that makes sense for most people in the game at that point. It is a little tricky because you were kind of trying to pretend like you were still with a lot of those people,
Yeah.
but basically, it's a house vote at that point, and so it's not the biggest deal. And I think also in many ways huge for your game in a way that you probably don't realize for a while, which is that it like massively frees up MJ and Leah.
Yes.
And obviously MJ is going to be very important later on. But then you become HOH, and this is also huge. The second HOH we've been talking about can be very important, especially if the first HOH is very chaotic, because you can really sort of like set the stage if the first
Yep.
HOH failed to. And you do. You help calm things down. The collective kind of solidifies despite being a low budget movie, and
Oh
and the Pentagon also kind of solidifies.
yes.
But you don't often have many meetings, collective meetings or Pentagon meetings,
Yeah.
and I think that's also part of why they never really locked in too much.
Agree. Yeah.
So tell me about your game plan as the week 2 HOH.
Yeah, so my game plan was like least amount of blood. How do I, and it's hard, you can't make everybody happy in the Big Brother house, but like how do I play in a way this week that sets me up well next week? A lot of HOHs don't this season didn't think about that because you can't play the next week. And there was I think it was Quinn, T Core, Tucker, Cedric all went home the week after their HOHs.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew just watching prior seasons, play for not just this week, play for next week. So how do I lead this house in a way where everybody is on board and kind of is like a fan of the decision, in agreement with the decision that I made? So for me, I wanted to make my HOH feel like everybody else's HOH. What do y'all want to do? Where is your head at? Like how can this HOH benefit you? And I knew off the bat, coming off week one with what Angela was doing, that was going to be easy. Everybody wanted her on the block, really wanted her out week two. Lisa was causing some rifts with the glitter week one. So that was her name was being tossed. And she had already been put up on the block. And then Kenny offered himself. So you can't really be mad at me when you're offering yourself to go up on the block. And then
You'd
who
be
else?
surprised, but yes.
It's so crazy the amount of people who threw themselves on the block this season. It's just it didn't make any sense. So for me, I can't really people can, people were just offering. And then when Lisa or Kenny took himself off the block, Tucker's offering himself. So I'm like, okay, house, and I made sure the house knew Tucker offered himself. This is a us. What do we want to do? So that people can't really pinpoint where my head is really at, and that was the goal. How do I get people to feel like I have everybody's back? This is we're a team. So how
Yeah.
do I make people feel like they're on my team? And that's how I chose to lead my HOH.
Yeah, I mean, so that's interesting because I always look to Derek's week 3 HOH as kind of
Mhm.
like the example of this is a whole house HOH. We're all coming together to get rid of
Yeah.
Devin,
Mhm.
and it's making everyone feel comfortable with me. It's stabilizing everything, and that's really, really good for Derek's game because he's in such a good position. I think a lot of players try to be Derek in week 3, but they're not in Derek's position. So like
Yes.
it's somebody who's like at the bottom of the house who tries to be like, this is a we HOH, and they do the work for the majority and find themselves still on the bottom now in a really
On the
worse
bottom.
position.
Yep.
But this works in a position like yours where you are at the top of the structure. So it makes sense that you are trying to do something that is calm and stabilizing. And it can be
Yes.
very effective, as we saw, temporarily at least.
Yes. And that the house was looking for calm. I knew
Mhm.
that. I read the house, I read the room, and our first 10 days were quite literally brutal on all fronts. So for me, I'm like, if I can create an environment, if I can set the temperature in the house, that an HOH can be led with grace and calmness and as a team, then I think I can gain even more respect or a level of comfort. I think that's what I did. People started to feel comfortable with me leading and comfortable with my words and my speeches. That like I got a hand clap. I don't know if they showed that after I put 3 people on the block. Like the
Mhm.
house started to clap. And I was like, this is unorthodox. They're clapping when I just put 3 people on the block because people respected how I handled the situation versus what they had experienced the week before. So I do think it set me up socially and relationally with everybody in the house.
Yeah, and going after an easy consensus target like Lisa makes a lot of sense. There
Yeah.
was a bit of a dilemma that you were faced with, though.
Yes.
One was that you had considered, and I agreed with you at the time. Leah was a good target for you that week.
Oh,
In
yeah.
terms of like a potential shot you could have taken,
Mhm.
it would have been a different shot, but I think it would have been an effective one given your position in the game. You ultimately don't go in that direction, and you also
Yeah.
don't go in the direction of using Mackenzie as a pawn because
Yeah.
she comes to you and tells you about her power.
Yeah.
And you had the choice: should I put her up and burn the power, or should I
Mhm.
try to work with her? And you were trying to decide, and the audience at the time as well was like had different opinions.
Yeah.
I was with you. I agreed that like I think that pulling her in makes more sense. Putting her
Mhm.
up and then not having control of the renom, you're just pissing somebody off that's definitely going to be safe, and now your HOH is not in your hands anymore. It was kind of a no-brainer. You just kind of
Yeah.
got to let Mackenzie have a pass and use this opportunity to like make as much of a bond with her as possible, right?
100%. My thing
Um,
with that, because I was kind of like, I didn't trust Leah as a game player week 2, and I think that may have been shared during my HOH. I haven't
yeah.
watched it. I stated my intention wasn't necessarily to win that second HOH,
Hmm.
um, but I wanted to stay in it as long as Leah was, as long as people I didn't really trust were in it, and Leah was just still there. So I said, my tail is going to keep answering these right so long as she's here, and then they happen to get the answers wrong. So there's something about her as a game player that I was like, I don't really trust this. So it would have been a great game move at the time, I thought. But when I see they were on the wrong side of the vote, them two,
Hmm.
it's them against the house. And then with Mackenzie, it's like she's still going to be here. So I'm going to make an enemy out of somebody who clearly has proven she can compete. Uh, and then nobody was really rocking with Mackenzie, like nobody. And here's what I'm going to say. Uh, her, Leah, and Matt really was just them 3 together the whole week. They
Yeah.
weren't really rocking with any, so they kind of put themselves in the position to be isolated. They did that. So for me, I'm like, they're kind of lone rangers on an island by themselves. I could go against them and make the easy thing because everybody in the house would be like, oh, that's cool. Or I can use them as numbers and as allies and try to mend whatever Leah and I have and then bring Mackenzie in. So that's the route that I felt like had least blood on my hands and then protected me. My thing was if I'm on the block in 2 weeks and Mackenzie still has this power, me keeping it safe during my HOH, maybe it'll benefit me in the future. So I'm glad I did that because I think it brought in 2 people who didn't really have anybody decided to flock to me. So I'm at this point, it's a numbers game. Like
Hmm.
who can I put on my side early in this game and gain trust? And I'm glad I made that decision.
Yes. And so this is also the start of, you know, a part of the Leah situation was that she was close with Cam.
Yes. Oh, we
And
too. Oh God, yeah. Mhm.
this this kind of prompts you to start to bond with Brooklyn. And so this, I remember seeing this and feeling like this is massive for both of them,
Mhm.
because within the power structure, if these two link up, they're both very competent players. Like they can do some serious damage,
Mhm.
and also
Yeah.
this is where Quinn should be. Like, this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
Quinn has already had this conversation with Brooklyn about you know, the situation within the Pentagon, and Brooklyn's sort of strategy is, well, great, now we've got Chelsie. I'm not
Yeah.
at the bottom of this structure anymore.
Yes.
And so, so you've got that. So this is when you kind of start to link up with Brooklyn more.
Yes.
And do you feel like within the Pentagon, like what is your sort of feeling structurally there? Like, you know, you feel like you have influence over Brooklyn. Do you still feel like you have influence over Cedric at that point? Because you were still close to Cedric, but it felt like you were losing Cam.
Yes. So
Mm-hmm.
Cedric, during our week one, like we really truly bonded, and I didn't, uh, I didn't know if Cedric would prioritize Cam over me. It was too early to figure that out. However, like Cedric was coming to me even after my HOH when he won the next week, like, what should I do? Should I try to win? Like he came to me like, big sister, help me, like tell me what to do. And so he really found a lot of comfort in me. So I knew I had enough influence over Cedric to try to pull him. I knew Quinn, I didn't really know where Quinn stood. And then Brooklyn and I are developing this relationship. So I'm not looking at the Pentagon as a structure or a hierarchy group. I'm looking at it as five people who are starting to develop more trust as a team. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
honestly how I'm looking at it. I am starting to notice I have influence within the group. And then I'm also noticing that they're looking to me to lead in a lot of ways. So I'm starting to notice, oh wow, they kind of are starting to see me as the glue, and I didn't want to be seen as the glue. And Quinn, a couple weeks later, we'll probably get to it. It was when he was going to use his power during his HOH, and he was having all these one-on-ones with the whole house in a suit. And he told me, he was like, listen, I kind of see you as the captain of the
Mm-hmm.
Pentagon, the leader of the Pentagon. And that freaked me out because
Yeah, see?
I'm like, oh, hold on, because if this leaks, if the Pentagon leaks, then they're gonna try to point it as if I started this. If I was, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't. I wasn't. So I just wanted to be part of the group, part of the team. So Quinn was trying to like I think honestly felt like I was a leader, and maybe it's because I had the influence with everybody within the Pentagon. I did feel like not necessarily that I was losing Cam, but for me, if I'm putting my whole trust into a five, uh, my fear is Cam gonna take this information and disperse it to Leah, who I knew was gonna then spread it around. So that was my primary issue. You're supposed to be locked in with us.
Mm-hmm.
Yet you're spending a lot of time and getting very close and googly eyed with somebody. You have these love goggles on. Is this going to leak? Is the Pentagon going to leak because you're in love? That
Mm-hmm.
was my fear. So I got very frustrated at like, you're trying to form a relationship with somebody who is not within the five. Bring her in or keep her out. You cannot do both because
Yeah.
we see how showmances and things work. People throw their game away for a showmance. And if Cam is linked to me and he's willing to throw his game away, that affects me as a game player.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my biggest issue throughout the whole season, that people thought it was a personal Chelsea's in love, yada, yada, yada. No, Chelsie is worried about losing a number because of we saw day 10 that the house doesn't like showmances.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's
I'm
just
seeing
crushes.
okay, yeah, crush it. So I'm seeing Cam like put himself in a position that ultimately was gonna hurt me and make me lose a number. So that was my primary frustration. So I did feel like I was losing him as a number and my influence on Cam. I felt like
Mm-hmm.
I was being lost to Leah, who I didn't really trust. So there was a
Mm-hmm.
lot of issues with that. Yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned this thing. There's definitely, I mean, it's really over the course of the season,
Yes.
that there's a lot of talk about you and Cam and what went on between the two of you, what was
Yeah.
promised, what was not promised,
Yeah.
what's going on, what is your what do you want to say about the whole situation?
Uh, Fans are crazy. With all this Camsy crap was insane when we got out of the house. I was like, there's a whole movement. This is insane. What I will say without getting in trouble is there is a lot of like a narrative that was trying to be pushed that I wouldn't say wasn't fully accurate. And so I'm just like, at this, what you need, what you want me to say? Like, that's not fully the truth, but let's go. So there was a lot of narrative that people saw that's like, oh, Chelsea is this jealous, and she thinks her and Cam are gonna be a thing. And I will say, Cam and I are great friends. There were conversations that were not on the live feeds. I saw there's like the Rock Room live feeds were always shut off when camera, and that was true. There's a lot of
Listen,
stuff.
it was a wild time because it was like they keep talking about these conversations that we haven't seen, and it's very frustrating.
So all I'm gonna say, like, Cam and I in our friendship will continue to be protected outside the house. His side of the story, he can tell, but for me, I'll say there were conversations that were had that were not on the live feed. So a lot of people are creating narratives about what they think. I'm like, y'all missed a lot of stuff. That's all I'm gonna say. And but I did my primary frustration for me to clear the record, set the record straight, was not necessarily I felt a way that Cam was flirting with other girls and wasn't flirting with me. That when I saw him and Leah like doing their thing week 2, that was like, out the window. For when you see somebody flirt so heavily, like in front of you for a day, all we have is each other in the house. We're each other's TV. So when you're watching this for 2.5 weeks, you kind of back off at the thought of being interested in somebody who's so head over heels with another person. I'm not that girl. So I was like, oh, whatever. That's like, let me keep it pushing. My primary frustration the whole season is I knew that Cam, when Brooklyn left or got evicted, I knew he really was at that time the only person that I trusted and the only person that I had. So I'm like, it's us against the world, is what it felt like in the house. Our games got blown up. Our Cedric is gone. Brooklyn's gone. Quinn blew it up. So it's me and you, friend. Like, so I knew he was all that I had. So Cam's position in the house affected me and my position in the house. So for me, my frustration was you are still putting yourself in a position to be seen as a showmance with multiple people. And that is not good for your game, which is in turn not good for my game. I need you here, Cam. I need you here as a number, and I need you here as a shield and a level of comfort. So that was my biggest frustration that was twisted as jealousy. But I didn't come on the show to get married. I came on Big Brother to win $750,000. So I can have a crush every night, but that's not my priority. Keep it pushing. How do I position myself well in this game? And Cam just not being smart in some areas of the game socially, I knew was going to affect me as a game player if he was going to get booted out. So that was where I went into high gear of like, stop being dumb. Like, people are linking y'all together and it's putting attention on you that doesn't need to be there. We need attention off. So that's setting the record straight with Camsy. Okay. At post the show, we are great friends. He will be with me this week. Like, we're great friends. We're figuring life out as like normal human beings. But in the show, I'm like, that's the last thing on my mind. What's on my mind is how do we get to the end? And it's like you're thinking about how to get rubbed. Like, screw the cuddling. How do we compete, Cam? So yeah, got me sweating with that
the
one.
Jump on the bed that was heard around the world. So, okay. Would it be fair to say like that that it's not like there were never any feelings at all, but that like sort of many of the narratives that were spun are like much exaggerated in terms of like how they like it was all like a mixture of things. There was primarily strategy, but a little bit of some other stuff, but it was not what a lot of people made it out to be, is basically what I'm hearing.
There was an exaggerated narrative for sure that was trying to be pushed. There's no more showmances on the show at that time. So it's like, what else do we have? Cam and Chelsie. So there were some, exaggerated things there. And I'm not gonna sit here and say like I didn't have feelings for Cam. There were moments and spurts where Cam is just comfortable to me. Like he is a safe space for me. We had a level of banter in the house that like I knew I could bag him. I knew I could clown him. I knew I could just go in and we're
you
still
certainly did.
Yeah, I did. Which is so crazy because the world, I found out, hated me for it. And Cam would walk into some of my like Chelsea's Cheesemate sessions of me holding up his shoes and he would come and join some of those sessions. So he knew we had a level of banter early on where we can kind of clown each other. He called me a bootleg Aaliyah. So like we had this level of comfort, which is a testament to our friendship, where I knew I could clown with him and have fun, but people they're not seeing how our friendship is growing in the house. I feel comfortable doing this to Cam. Cam feels comfortable doing this, but the world's like, how dare she? I can't wait till Cam's. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just our friendship. So I started to develop a care for him as a friend at that point. I was not thinking anything romantically, but the more everybody will see, like when you get to know Cam outside of the house, the more you get to know him, the more you like him. He's a phenomenal human. And so I saw that in the house. He frustrated me as a game player. But the more I got to know him as Cam, the more I'm like, you are really going to be part of my life for a long time. And I started to care about him. But my romantic eyes, I was there to play. I really was. And so I care about him deeply as a friend, but I wasn't like, there are some exaggerated narratives there for sure. I was here for it. I'm like, what y'all want? Let's make this spicy. So that's that on that.
That is that on that. So back to week 2, and I promise we'll try to pick up the pace a little bit. But back to week 2. So I think that one of the things that we mentioned, because I think that you make a very good point, which is that you absolutely should be worried about a blooming showmance. Showmances are probably one of the number one reasons why these alliances blow up, is because it's the Kyle situation in BB24. It's like, to some degree, the Corey in America situation, BB25. There's always this conflict if the showmance is not involved in the thing. And I do think that generally the strategy is just pull the person in, or just cut it off at the root, right? You are, I think, justifiably concerned about this situation, but unfortunately for you, that's kind of the distraction, and the real danger is Quinn running around, getting into a Visionaries showmance.
You want to know how I found out about the Visionary and all of Quinn's craziness? Was after the show, I'm on an Instagram live and people are like, have you heard about the Visionaries? And I'm like, I caught it. I saw it in the thing. I was like, Visionaries? So I hit up Brooklyn. I said, explain to me, what is a visionary? She told me. So I started to do a little deep dive myself with some of the house guests. I had no idea Quinn was running rampant in the house. I had no idea. It definitely was a distraction. My concern with Cam and his showmance was a distraction to what was actually happening. It could have really royally screwed up my game had week 5 not happened. So yeah, Quinn, I had no idea.
Yeah. Let's talk about the almost nominating Cam thing, because you probably already heard a little bit of my story about this, but which is that I'm watching you talk to Mackenzie and Leah, who are pushing for like Cam to go up on the block all of a sudden. And I'm like, I don't even know why they're doing that. But like they're doing that. And I'm like, okay, Chelsie is just, she's just saying what they want to hear. Obviously she's not going to put up Cam. Like that's very dangerous at this point in the game. You don't realize it, but like Quinn probably votes Cam out if he goes on the block.
If he goes on the block, I know.
So it would have been real bad.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm like, there's no way this is actually happening. Then they pull Cam in. And Cam is like saying no at first. I'm of course he's gonna say no, thank God. And then he starts agreeing to it. I'm like, Cam.
So when
tell me the story.
So I am sitting here struggling with that third nominee. Who do I put up? again, I'm trying to win over Leah and Mackenzie. So how do they're on the opposite side of the house. How do I get them to feel like we're doing this HOH together? That was my pure thing. I was feeding them what they wanted to hear. Who do y'all want? And then when Leah of all people mentions Cam, I'm thoroughly confused because I'm like, this is your man at the time. What do you mean, Cam? So I get frustrated on a personal level for Cam that like this girl you're all over is throwing your name out to go on the block. Like this is pretty crazy to me. So for me, I don't know if they showed this, but I was like in my head, I'm like, Cam is the last person y'all should be considering to put on this block. So I told their tails, well, y'all go bring him. Like go bring him up here. So I told them to go fetch Cam. So Cam knows like this was not a Chelsie idea. Let me show you how these girls are so easily willing to throw you under the bus in a moment where they feel like they're trying to, get on the up and up. So when Cam's in the room and we're having the conversation, I'm like, I'm just going to let them, my goal was let Mackenzie and Leah show their cards to Cam. Let me get Cam back into the Pentagon. Let me get him to know that really I'm the one you should be trusting with the Pentagon, not these other girls. So that was my goal. Let me show him.
That's exactly what I thought at the time. I was like, this is what she's doing.
That's what I was doing. And then I'm having the conversation with Cam once they leave, and the narrative is starting to go to like put me up. And I'm like, hold on. Now there's really a spell casted over Cam. If he's willing to like, then again, I'm getting worried about he's willing to do something for two people who are not in the Pentagon. So that's where I'm like, something's off. I'm losing Cam. At the end of the day, I was not going to put him up, not remotely. That was not going to be smart. I've seen the show. Pawns go home. So I'm like, I think I can pull him back in, especially after that fiasco about these two, Leah and Mackenzie trying to throw him under the bus. I'm like, surely after this, he's going to be like indebted to the Pentagon. So I'm not going to touch him. Who is the easier option? So that was my thought process. I was feeding them what they wanted to hear, but also trying to show Cam their cards. And in some ways it didn't work. I had to show him that for half the season.
Yeah, I think because like I was waiting for you to like say to him after they left, like, yeah, obviously I'm not doing that. But instead it was like so and then the whole Cedric situation happened after that.
It showed they didn't watch the show. That's what it showed me. But with me trying to, a lot in the house, what I did was I would throw like seeds and see what took root and what sprouted. So for me, I was trying to see how Cam would feel about that conversation. Cam, where are you? So what's going on? That's what I was trying to gauge, because I was already sketchy about, is he going to leave the Pentagon and be paired up with them? So I'm trying to read him in that moment. So I didn't want to directly show my card. I'm like, okay, how do you feel about this? And then the fact that he was like, fine. I'm like, now, Houston, we have a problem. What do you mean you're fine? So that was I was trying to play chess, read 10 steps ahead. And I was confused at his willingness to die on a hill for people who weren't part of his final five. It just didn't make sense to me.
Okay, well, let's set the record straight. Did you ever consider at all putting either Cam or Cedric on the block, or did you ever consider it at all?
I would have never put them on the block.
Okay.
Never.
Good to
never,
know.
ever, 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 ever. I only have 5 people I was rocking with. I'm not putting two of the options I'm working with on the block. I'm not doing that.
Let me tell you the experience of watching it on the feeds, because you had that conversation with Cedric where he was like, he comes and gets you, I think, on the stairs, and he's like, I'll do it. And like the feeds cut like right after that.
They cut? So
we were for the ceremony. So we were like,
that's right. The ceremony was literally right after that.
We were like, oh my God, what is she going to do?
Oh my gosh. No, I looked at Cedric. I was like, not doing that. I'm not doing you. What kind of, no, I'm not doing that. He was like, well, I'm just trying to tell you, like, I'll be down for the count. And I'm like, well, I'm not down for the count, because I don't know how this house is going to flip. So I was never, I had to, then I didn't want to show my cards to any of the house guests that I was never going to touch Cam and never going to touch Cedric. I wanted the house to feel like I had everybody's back. So to Leah, to Mackenzie, I wanted them to feel like, yeah, I'll consider Cam. Yeah, I'll consider these people. because I didn't want them to link Cam and I together. So that was all strategic. But at the end of the day, I had my mind set from the jump of as soon as I won, it was going to be Lisa, Kenny, and Angela. I already knew that. That was the easiest, least amount of blood. And to put up my own alliance members would be pretty idiotic that early.
Yeah. Yeah, for what it's worth, Cam took a big hit on the stock watch that week for volunteering.
Yes. Yes.
And while this is one of the 2 weeks you weren't the highest, you were the second highest still in terms of rate. Like you had a 6
Rating.
versus the highest was a 7. So
who was 7?
7. The 7s were Chemo and T-Core that week.
T-Core, oh, that wow.
Because at the time they had the Visionaries, the Underdogs Alliance was building. They were pulling in, Tucker, and it was starting to look like this revolution was about to happen, and then Tucker blows everything up, right? So
yes. How can we forget? Okay, so how legit were the Visionaries? Like how legit, and who initiated the Visionaries? Was it Quinn?
So Quinn and Chemo were super close at the beginning. They were have-nots together.
That's right. Yeah.
And he told Chemo about his power very early on. And Chemo and T-Core were very close early on as well. And so the three of them came together, and he told them about the Pentagon and all of this stuff.
What week was that? What week was
I think he told them about Pentagon in week 2, if I'm remembering correctly.
You're kidding. That early is crazy.
Yeah, it had to have been week 2 because it was that knowledge that made us feel like, okay, they are now the most knowledgeable people in the house in terms of the structure. And also at the same time, they were super well connected. Their social games were very good. Things were looking very positive for that duo. And in the meantime, we were a little bit like, okay, Quinn, you're doing too much.
I listened to his, I'm telling you, his 5 hours, I was so confused because I was like, what was okay. It's just doing a lot unnecessarily. So I was just overwhelmed for Quinn listening to him. I'm like, what were you doing? Oh,
so you take Lisa out, easy week.
Yeah.
Cedric wins the following week.
Yes.
In the meantime, there's all this drama with Angela and Quinn, which you were a part of to some degree because Quinn tells T-Core, T-Core tells you tell Angela, the whole thing blows up.
Yeah.
So we don't have to get into the nitty gritty of that because it wasn't super relevant to your game. Although it was to some degree because it's what leads to Angela blowing up Quinn's power to Tucker, who then confirms with Chemo, who then gets that confirmation and then blows the whole Underdogs Alliance up. So in some ways, it's really the spark that lights the explosion.
I'm grateful, and it did because it exposed a lot of stuff to me. But yeah, Angela showed me a lot that week. I was like, oh my God, I didn't mean for this conversation to completely blow up the whole house, including Quinn's power, and then eventually my game. So that was just.
And what I will say about it too is that, and you probably heard this a little bit from Quinn, is that it did kind of tell people in the house or show people in the house that you were really close to T-Core because T-Core told you that information. And I don't think it was even from my memory watching it, it wasn't like hey, we're secretly aligned, let me share this information. It was more of a just conversation, hey, I heard Angela said this.
So Angela, you're talking about Angela talking about
saying this is the group.
So it wasn't even T-Core that told me. It was Cedric.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, you're right. I forgot about that.
So the T-Core thing,
T-Core talks to Cedric, yeah.
So the T-Core thing, maybe we'll get to that in a couple weeks, but within this podcast, but the T-Core and I thing was very interesting how people really tightly paired us together because Cedric was the one that came up to me before Vito. Yeah. He was like, yo, just let you know, Angela said this, blah, 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 blah. I didn't want, because I knew Angela had the ability to do this in the house, and I didn't want her to spread something that was false. So, or spread anything. So my intention was, let me dissolve this just with Angela. Let me go talk to Angela. But before I do, I want to make sure that what Cedric is telling me is correct. So I went to Quinn. I said, hey, I'm going to talk to Angela, not to blow up your game, but I don't need her. And I'm trusting Quinn at this moment. Mind you, he's still Pentagon for life. So I'm thinking this is between us. It's not going to blow up. Quinn, you have my back, whatever. So Quinn tells me it's true. I go back to Angela and try to dissolve it and have a one-on-one conversation. Didn't know she was going, and then she was like, don't worry, I'm not gonna have a blow up, because there are so many times in the house I've had to calm Angela down and have literally mentoring therapy sessions with her, hours upon end. So this was yet another conversation where I was like, don't blow up, this won't be good for your game. I'm not feeling a way about you spreading this. I just want to let you know this stays between us. And I wanted to dissolve any type of, or bring clarity to this. She's like, I said, don't be mad at Quinn. Quinn didn't come to me. I'm not going to tell you who did, but Quinn didn't come and tell me about this information. So don't be upset with him. I found it out through the grapevine. She's like, don't worry. I'm not going to tell. This stays between us. Not even joking. 4 minutes later.
It's immediate.
It's an immediate blow up. And I'm outside, and then T-Core comes out crying. And I'm like, why is T-Core crying? Why is Quinn teary-eyed? It was just a whole, not even 10 minutes later, I was like, now this is not good for me. It was a hot mess. Oh my goodness. But the T-Core thing was interesting.
Have you seen this in the episode yet?
No, I have not.
Okay, so because I think what happens is, Angela confronts Quinn in the bathroom, and then T-Core comes in and is like, what's happening? And Angela starts explaining, like, hey, I basically, I know that you, this thing that Quinn said, and I heard from Chelsie. And T-Core's like, oh yeah, sorry, I said something. I think it's kind of like, I think it gets connected there. And so like people, I think at that point start connecting, like, okay, well, T-Core is telling Chelsie things. But yeah, you're right. It actually went through Cedric. But of course, nobody's gonna believe that T-Core's close to Cedric after she flips the house on him. So
I didn't, like, T-Core didn't tell me anything at that time. All she and I solidified was like, we're not going to touch each other till jury. We're going to have each other's back. That was the only conversation we had about really having each other's back. And then we were in the collective together. But T-Core was even on the outs of the collective for me. I was Pentagon. So when people started to spin that narrative within the house of like Chelsie, T-Core, that makes sense because Angela really pushed for that.
She did, and it gets more than I don't know how much you've heard, but like a huge narrative of the season was T-Core seems so much more invested in Chelsie than Chelsie is invested in T-Core, and I don't know how much you knew about that throughout the season, but like the way she talked about you as a player, it was as if you were her number one, and we were like, is this another one that we're like missing the conversations on the feeds?
No.
Because I don't hear Chelsie even talking to T-Core that much.
No, there was no live feeds that were cut. Like that T-Core and I have a mutual like respect for each other as humans, like obsessed with each other. So to this day, like, so I think her talking highly about me and my game in the house reflected how she felt about me as a person. Now, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but we genuinely had a mutual love for each other. But I knew if it was me, Chemo, Rubina, and her final four, I'm at the lower end of that. I knew.
We don't even know, honestly.
So
that's the whole thing,
which is so crazy. That's honestly crazy to me because T-Core did say like her priority was Rubina and myself, but I knew how close her and Chemo were, and I knew that she saved Rubina over set. Like I knew the house split that week that T-Core was really gonna rock with people she was closest to in the house. In the house, her and I were not closer than her and Rubina and her and Chemo. So I knew I was on the lower end. Now, when it came to everybody's like, oh, Chelsie didn't fight for T-Core the way that T-Core fought for me. It's like, I was not, if I ever had power, I was not going to touch T-Core until probably Final 5, maybe Final 4. Again,
Well, you
I
talked a
wasn't
long time about with Cam and multiple people about bringing T-Core to Endgame for sure.
the end game. She was
You
the
just
best.
didn't talk to her that much about
Yes,
it.
yes, because that was just the thing that I was like, I'm not touching. And T-Core and Chemo fought for me really hard during when Tucker was trying to get me out. So I knew these people have they have my back over most. So keeping them around longer is going to benefit me. But also, I knew T-Core had a level of love for me that I had back for her. So I'm like, I'm not touching T-Core. Now, I'm not going to bend over backwards to try to keep her if other people are trying to touch her, because everybody was already Chelsie and T-Core final two. Tucker started the rumor. Angela started the rumor. So for me, during Janky World, I did not, and I know I'm fast forwarding ahead, but I did not want T-Core to go home. Like Cam and Mackenzie brought that to me saying, okay, T-Core's going home. I was shocked by it. I couldn't show them my level of shock and like, you guys are stupid, because again, they had a concern with my closest with T-Core. I'm trying to position myself to where nobody feels like, oh, Chelsie and T-Core are really in a final two. I didn't want people to like Angela and Tucker's rumor to be solidified by me fighting hard for T-Core. So for me, I'm just like, okay, whatever y'all want. And then I had conversations with Cam after the fact, like that wasn't the move. Not at all. T-Core being around, because T-Core would have stuck close to me. And I think I would have had influence to protect Cam even in that. So
Yeah,
I
mean,
was Team T-Core.
that's easily, I think, your biggest strategic hit in the end game is losing T-Core
Losing T-Core.
to
I
MJ.
did not want that.
Yeah, there was this brief moment where we were like, oh, here we go. Mackenzie has woken up. She wants to win this game, and then the next week she went back to sleep.
And then the next week was my HOH. Yeah. yeah. So that was like, I was, to set the record straight, I was about T-Core. I was not going to touch her. And if she was in the final five with me, I was going to position myself to where I didn't have to touch anybody. Like I didn't have to make that decision, which I did a lot, final seven and on. Like I'm going to put myself in positions where I don't have to really touch. I'm going to let everybody else do the dirty work. So T-Core was going to have her back. If I had power, I was not going to use the power against her. I was going to use the power to benefit her. However, if power is not in my hands, I'm going to let the cards fall where they may.
Yeah, and it was funny because there was a point in time, and I think it probably existed throughout, but like you were probably for both of you, you were probably the only person that the other one might not beat in the final two. Like T-Core beats everybody except for maybe you, and you beat everybody except for maybe her.
Yes. 1,000,000%. T-Core in the end, like her eviction, when I tell you everybody was sobbing, like she was so light, even by I could not touch T-Core, like probably at the detriment of my game. So I'm telling you, any moment of power, T-Core is not an option for me, not remote, even over Cam. T-Core is insane. So T-Core is my girl, but yeah, fighting for her publicly would have put me in a position that would have been bad. So I couldn't do that.
So Cedric, HOH, the Tucker thing happens. So basically the series of events is that, and you probably heard a little bit of it with Quinn's deep dive, but like Tucker, final straw with Quinn, he decides to rat out Quinn to Cam, who then lets Cedric know. And then later they all have a conversation about it. And Tucker wants to orchestrate this strategy of, I'm going to use the veto on Angela so I can beat Quinn in the AI arena, and we'll take out Quinn this week. And he proposes this to Cedric. Cedric talks it over with Cam. They both agree the play should be keep Quinn on board for now. Keep this in our back pocket. We do not trust Quinn from now on. Because Cedric had a final two with Quinn that I think he was pretty loyal to.
Which is crazy. Why did Quinn want a final two with me? I got a problem with that though.
I think he was probably like, she's too smart. I don't know.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, I didn't know Cam and Cedric had trepidation about Quinn. I didn't know that. They didn't.
Yeah, they were like fully. They were like, we're keeping him for now, but we will strike later. But you in Brooklyn seemed to be pretty chill about the whole thing. Like, oh, he had a power, whatever.
Yes, I was not. I felt, again, I'm putting all my eggs in this basket. I really like Quinn, and I want to see him in the final 5. Point blank, period. So the fact that he had a power and didn't share anything, I was like, if I was in his shoes, I probably would have done the same thing. And me being a fan of the show, it's like, it's not smart to not share your power. Little did I know, he shared it all right with people that
so that was the thing, right? Like he'd shared it with Chemo when Chemo's the reason why Tucker knew. So like that was the big red flag for Cam and Cedric. How did you feel? Because his explanation was, I think I felt bad, and just decided to tell him, and it was early on.
So I didn't find out that Quinn, that series of events, until a couple weeks after that, to be honest.
Okay. I wasn't sure. Yeah.
Yeah. As we're out working conversation, then I'm finding out that Chemo was the one that told, and Chemo was acting really weird that week. He wears his emotions on his face and his sleeve. So you can always tell when something was off of Chemo. So I knew he was acting really nervous during that week, as if he was the reason why this blow up happened. But I didn't know that Quinn told Chemo like that information. I had no idea until weeks later, where things fizzled down to where I wasn't. Had I known earlier, I would have been very frustrated, and I would have been way more on guard about Quinn. But I didn't know, so that didn't really faze me. I'm like, I would have done the same thing. Quinn, you're good. I got your back. You're fine. I don't feel away. Well, how dumb. Quinn got me first couple weeks. Oh man.
Yeah, well, Kenny ends up leaving. Obviously, Tucker, if he hadn't won, would have gone there. But instead, we lose Kenny, and he finally gets his wish.
Yep, his wish he has every day.
Is basically automatic HOH the following week. He would love to go after Angela, but he can't because she won HOH herself. And that means, of course, that he needs somebody to replace Angela on the block. He's thinking about Rubina, but decides against it because he doesn't want to upset Tikor and Chemo if he doesn't have to. And so instead, he looks at Cedric, who volunteers. This is a big one.
Were they still a final 2 at that time?
At that time, Cedric was pretending. So their final 2 was always Quinn pretending. But after Cedric's HOH week, they were now both pretending.
Was Quinn ever a real life thing with any final 2?
I think that the person he was most loyal to, or the people he was most loyal to, were Tikor and Chemo for a while.
That's so crazy to me.
Which is wild, because they were probably 2 of the people he should have been least loyal
trusted
to at that time, because they were.
Interesting.
We talked about this again. It was the season of crushes, and primarily unrequited crushes, and that also translated to the game, where like Quinn had like a strategy crush on Tikor and Chemo, and it was an unrequited strategy crush because they did not want to play with him in the way that he wanted to play with them,
which was clear to me in the house. That was very clear to me. So that's why hindsight is like, that's so weird. He was willing to like really rock with these people. I'm like, wrong group, Quinn. What? So yeah, I'm putting up Cedric. That he didn't really walk me through that until the last minute. He's like, okay, Cedric told me. Quinn didn't even tell me. Cedric's like, hey, Quinn decided to put me up so the house doesn't really see us being close. So for me, I'm like, interesting strategy. There's so many people in this house. I don't think anybody's looking at Quinn and Cedric as this like, duo. I wasn't. So I don't know why you're trying to defend something.
Well, I think because he didn't put him up the previous week when Tucker tried to get him to.
Try to get him up. Oh, that's right. Yeah. You're right. That's right. Didn't put him up. So I still thought it was dumb. But I was also like, I trusted Quinn even more when the replacement was Rubina. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, okay, Quinn actually does have our back. Cedric is just to protect us, to protect the Pentagon. This is fine. Not ideal, but fine. But we see that blew up.
Yeah. Well, this is basically like Quinn did ask you, but it was a pretty rushed conversation. like,
Like how I feel about Cedric.
yeah, like he talked to Cedric and he's like, let me talk to Chelsea and Cam and get in Brooklyn and make sure that they're okay with this. And so then when he calls you in for your one-on-one, I think it's like, so Cedric's idea is to go up on the block. Are you fine with that? And I think all of you were kind of like, I guess so.
So I was just confused at the thought process. Like I let them explain it, but I'm like, okay, not my HOH. Again, like you do your thing. As long as I'm not being touched, I'm fine. However, I don't see this logic. But if you feel like people are starting to get on to Pentagon, then this could be a fine way to protect it. So I wasn't fighting too hard against it. And it seemed like his mind was already made up. I wasn't trying to do too much scheming that early or, put my foot on the gas. It was unnecessary.
Yeah. So this is really when, you and Brooklyn are, you and Brooklyn the previous week had really, rose to prominence. The two of you were now the top rated players on our stock watch.
Wow.
And then you maintained that the following week, because we rated before the flip happened.
That's it.
So and let me tell you, the reason why we felt like the two of you, not just because of like the fact that you were both, handling the game well, but the key to the game at that point, I when I was saying it that early, was they have Mackenzie and Leah. And the fact that they have Mackenzie and Leah gives them so much power beyond even the structure that they're in.
Why is that? Why is that?
Because these were two extra pieces that nobody else was even looking at. Nobody else was bothering with. They were being put up on the block as pawns, sure, but like these are people that were capable of winning competitions. Mackenzie certainly was.
Yes.
And who were also, like, especially in the case of Mackenzie, just looking for a home, just looking for somebody to be loyal to. And those players are so valuable, as we will later see in the season. And so the fact that you had those two as extra votes and numbers meant that you had so much power. However, we were a little concerned because it felt like you were not being super active about maintaining them as numbers. And we were worried that meant that like this was just a position you had potentially just kind of like found yourself in rather than one you were actively trying to like maintain. And then we felt like, this exact worry is coming to a head when it's those two votes that allow the Cedric vote to happen. And those are two votes they should have been able to control.
Now that I think about it, if I had wrangled them two in, Cedric would have still been in the house. Here's why I didn't. I didn't notice a value.
Because it was kind of like you had Mackenzie and she had Leah at that time, I think.
Yes. So I didn't recognize the huge value of Mackenzie until I was put on the block. So that was that week after, I think. So, but early on, here was my trepidation. Leah, already week 2, I was iffy about. She was willing to put herself in a position to be in a showmance. She just played a type of game that she was willing to position herself to be a target in some ways. And then Mackenzie was in a showmance. And then after that, during Angela's HOH, she was talking about how we need to get Angela out. So I was like, do I want to, like I said in the beginning, I wanted to play the game with people who I felt like were level-headed, positioned themselves well, because if they did, then I'm positioned well. So with how they were playing the game, it made me a little scared to be associated with them because of how they played, but also they weren't really associating themselves with anybody else.
Right.
So do I want to
remember you talking about like, hey, she's following me around.
And I don't want to be like, don't put me on the outs. I'm still trying to be on the up and up from being a microchip. So I didn't want, I viewed them as they're in their own island. And even Lisa tried to join their own island and got booted for it. So and then they were like, even to Lisa, don't follow us around. We don't want to be associated with you. So they put themselves in a position where they were isolated on their own island. To be around them a lot and to play with them would have then separated me from the position I felt like I was in the house, which was good with the majority. And the two are just the two. So I did not want to align with them for those reasons. Not
Mhm.
align with them, but I wasn't trying hard to influence them that early
Yes,
because of the
exactly.
type of game I saw them playing early on. I'm like, that's not smart gameplay. Don't come close to me because don't get me involved in the mess because Matt's out. Matt's out for this.
I,
So I'm not trying to be casualty in the making.
I'm curious to know if you would agree, because I'm thinking about like how to contextualize this,
Hmm.
because like there's a thought in my head that is like, okay, Chelsie is this very talented player who spent the first half of the season kind of like playing it a little safe, a little
Yeah.
bit like, I just want to make sure I'm surviving. I just want to make sure I'm like,
Mhm.
keeping all of my options open. I don't want to take too many risks when I don't have to.
Yeah.
Then everything blows up. The next week you find yourself on the block and you're
Yeah.
forced to kind of like, okay, now I need to push. Now I need to go into overdrive. And
Yeah.
as soon as you start doing that, you're like, oh, wait, this is working. Like I'm actually really good at this. And it's
Yes.
almost like if you had pushed earlier, maybe things would have been different. You would have found that like you were capable of pulling them in and influencing them without getting in trouble. But
Yep.
like you were just a little hesitant to in the beginning portion of the game because you didn't feel the need to take those risks yet.
No, there is no need. I think I saw a lot of people who were evicted whose game could have really been elongated had they just like chilled out. Like a lot of people did an unnecessary defending, unnecessary moves really early on. So for me, it's like I was not aware of my influence until after I was put on the block and got off. Actually, when I was on the block is when I realized my influence because
Mm,
I was not an option even on the block.
yeah.
I knew it was Cam and I knew it was Brooklyn. So I was like,
Much to the frustration of Tucker, you were not an option.
exactly, exactly. So I'm like, the fact that I'm sitting on the block after my game was blown up and it was revealed I'm in alliances and people still are like, we got you, you're fine. I knew I had influence in that moment immediately that I had the house I potentially have. But prior to that, didn't know and didn't need to be that influential early on in the game. So if you don't need to be leading the house, do, like for me, I'm like, I'm not going to make moves unless I need to. And pulling Mackenzie and Leah in, I didn't know that I would really be able to influence them that early in the game.
Hmm.
Had I known, I would have pushed harder to have Cedric stay for sure. But then at the same time, I was also really thinking the collective was a thing. So
Hmm.
I didn't feel the need. I'm like, regardless of Mackenzie and Leah, the collective is going to be the thing that keeps Cedric. So I didn't feel the need to push them for that reason alone. Didn't know, the what was happening and within the collective. So had I been aware of that stuff, I would have pushed a little bit harder. Again, though, people are like, look at Chip and Dip, look at the microchips, the final two. So I even with Brooklyn, I can't
Hmm.
push too hard to hold on to somebody if the house is pairing me with them. Any pair is going to be targeted. So I'm like, nope, my hands are tied. I'm not gonna push hard for anybody to show my cards. So that's why. But really, it was the type of gameplay Mackenzie and
Hmm.
Leah had early on that made me be like, don't associate me with that. Keep me away. I am on the other island. Nope.
I'm curious, like if you maybe, I mean, obviously you wouldn't change anything because you won the game, but
Mhm.
like I guess if you were to either play again or like advise future players, if they're in a similar situation to yours, obviously you felt like you were doing the right thing given the knowledge that you had, but unfortunately you didn't know some things. Do
Yeah.
you think that you should push even when you don't think you have to, in case you're missing something, or should you play more cautiously in general? Because obviously it's specific to the situation.
It is. It's situational for this season specifically. We're dealing with AI, the AI arena. So the twist.
Hmm.
So pushing really hard for one person in that
Yeah.
situation means you're against two other people who could potentially stay. So I would at for me, I felt like I was really calculated on when, like the timing of which I went really hard in the paint to keep or to go after certain people. So my advice for any future player is like timing is everything. And the information you give out is everything. So and how early you choose to show your cards that all can make or break your season. So for me, it's like is pushing really hard to save one person, does that set you up well with all the rest of the house guests? If it puts you in a bad position, remaining silent or not pushing too hard may position you better in the house. So
Mm.
that would be my like, me going hard in the paint for Cedric would have been me going way against Rubina and way against Mackenzie.
Yeah.
And I saw week 1, all 3 people who Angela put on the block still stayed in the game the next week because I put all their tails back up on the block.
You did.
So I'm like, y'all, whoever you put on the block could still be here because of this twist. So to push really hard to show my cards was just not smart.
I think that's a great call, actually, because something we haven't talked a lot about is the AI arena and how that changes the game. And we talked about it all season long, that it makes a game like yours, I think, a little harder for the majority alliance, which is not normal for a twist. Usually it's the opposite. Usually the twists help the majority alliances. And this is, I think, an example of that, where, like, think about it. If all week long it had been Rubina versus Cedric, I think Cedric stays. Because
100%.
you and Brooklyn are working on Leah and Mackenzie the whole time.
Yes.
But because of the uncertainty and the chances of that specific 2 people being on the block in the first place were so low that, like, not made it so low, but, like, not high enough to be worth spending all this social capital on a situation that might not even happen. That it becomes, and that's, I think, the strength of the twist, is that, like, it created a situation where it would have been probably a lot easier for you if it had been the other way around.
The twist jacked me up. That's all I gotta say. The twist, because you can't, but that was my superpower Tucker's week, was like, you have to be very cautious of your timing of conversations. So for me, when I really wanted Tucker to go home, I had that conversation the night before. Angela, her idea of getting Tucker out was right. I was like, go Angela. Internally, I'm like, yes, finally somebody. But I'm like, that was too premature. You had that conversation too soon because there's days to talk and there's still an option. Tucker's still here. So for me to have that conversation about keeping Cedric no matter what too early, and then Cedric potentially not winning could set me up really bad. So the twist just messed any type of plan we had up, messed us up. And you did have to consider 3 different possibilities every single week. And so for me, it's like, I can't lean too much on one possibility because there is, the 33, that's only 33% chance that that's going to happen. So am I going to put all my eggs in that low percentage? No, that's stupid.
Yeah. Well, things flip. I don't know how much you've heard about, like, how they flipped and how close it was. I'm sure you heard a bit of it on the Quinn deep dive, like the back and forth between Chemo and T-Core, all like for days and days.
I didn't know that.
Oh, it was every single night was like, tomorrow morning we're gonna talk to Quinn. We're gonna talk to these people. We're gonna see if and then they'd wake up in the morning, nothing would happen, and then they'd talk late at night again. Like, okay, this time tomorrow we're gonna talk to these people.
I saw memes of like T-Core and Chemo every day saying they're gonna have game conversations and us waiting around like, when is it gonna happen? So I didn't know
too. It was like, we're gonna not spend all our time together. We're gonna split up. We're gonna talk to other people, and then
didn't happen. Never happened ever the whole season. That's so interesting. I had no idea it was back and forth. Not at all.
Yeah. So they flip the house. T-Core says we did that. And then, Tucker wins the following HOH. And now he should be going after Quinn, but Joseph, T-Core, and Chemo are all pushing him in the direction of Brooklyn for a lot of reasons. One is that they have a great connection to Quinn, and I should say Rubina is as well. But they're close to Quinn. They're also close to you. Yeah. And at the same time, it's gotten out. Primarily, I think Joseph was the first person to really link the 2 of you together. Hey, watch out for Brooklyn and Chelsie. They're tight. They're running things. And so it
was blown up by this point, right?
Yes. Quinn had already told Joseph about the Pentagon. So now Joseph, who thought that he was like the creator and leader of the collective, is like, oh, these people are Joseph. Okay, I should tell you a little bit about Joseph, because
set the record straight.
Joseph, to his credit, was definitely a lead architect of the collective in week 1. Right. Yes. He helps pull people together. He's talking to Angela. He's one of the low budget actors.
Yeah.
And
I went up. Yes. Yes.
And so week 2, to his credit, his sort of like vision of, I created this alliance and this is the majority alliance of the house, is part of what keeps the thing together, because a lot of other people were like, is this even a thing? And he's like, it is a thing. We're still doing this.
No, he's fighting for it. Yes.
However, from that point forward, he really was like, I am the Dr. Wilderic of this group. Like, I am running things. He would talk to the cameras about being a mastermind, and the star of the show.
I saw that, heard that. Yes.
And when he found out that not only were you included in this group, which he didn't, because he saw you as on the Matt side of things initially. So like, where did that come from? Where is Brooklyn? Or sorry, it was either you or Brooklyn, one of the two of you.
It was Brooklyn. It was Brooklyn that he saw, because he brought me into the collective. Yeah.
But he saw you as the person that brought Brooklyn in.
I did.
Right. So he was mad at you about that, because you brought Brooklyn into his alliance, like without any
that was accidental though. I thought so. He wanted 18 million people in this alliance. I thought that Brooklyn was one of those people. So he's going around whispering into people's ears, like, a collective meeting or, alliance meeting at 12:45 a.m. Meet me in the HOH room. So I go and tell Brooklyn that. She's like, what? And I'm like,
it's so funny.
Was she not? It was it was an accident. I thought she was in this alliance already. And then when Joseph came up to me, he's like, how did Brooklyn get there? I was like, oh, I have to lie. I don't know how I was like, oh my gosh. So he was right. It was my fault, but it was an accident.
And so this is part of how he clocks the two of you, and part of why he now is like sort of looking at the two of you pretty closely. Gotcha. Then Quinn later confirms there's a core within the collective, and it's Chelsie, Brooklyn, Cam, Cedric, me. That's when Joseph is like, okay.
Why did he do that?
What
was the point of that? What was the point?
Starting to get closer to Joseph throughout these weeks, and was trying to like build his army. And specifically when the Tucker thing didn't work out, Quinn needed because he thought Tucker was going to be on that side. So he needed some sort of replacements. And he was talking more and more with Joseph, and they were bonding over this podcast. And
I heard. Yes. Yes. Dang, that's crazy.
So Tucker then, who was getting close to Joseph then, who was getting close to Tucker, tells Tucker about the collective, and later about the core, which is I don't think he knows the name at this point. So Tucker knows for a while, and so Tucker understands that Quinn is kind of like trying to break away, and that the two of you are probably the core of this. So Joseph has a lot to do with Tucker's nominations this week.
Yes.
And he is happy for one of the two of you to leave, because he sees you correctly as the two most dangerous players in the game at that point.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so this is really one of Joseph's finest hours. Like, he's really doing some good stuff here with the information he has and with the influence he has over Tucker. However, T-Core, Chemo, and Rubina have something else to say about you specifically being targeted, of course. And so there's the whole situation. Brooklyn kind of messes herself up a little bit, because
she was in that little 5-star, 5 points, whatever.
She had the 5 points thing going on, which was a little bit of extra trouble she got in. And then also she was like specifically right there telling Rubina, like, I'm sorry, it was real the whole time. Like right as she thinks she's about to vote her out. And so then right after, she's like, oh, I was lied to by T-Core and Chemo. They lied to me about the vote. They tricked me into voting you out, Rubina. And that, of course, pisses T-Core and Chemo off. And Tucker, who is like, I told you Brooklyn's a snake, is like, finally you believe me, because they had been defending Brooklyn prior to that. Brooklyn. It just all kind of crumbles for Brooklyn. And in the meantime, you are keeping your cool. You are like, maintaining things. You're finding out that Quinn is the one that blew you up. You're finding out all this information. And while Brooklyn is like, screw that guy. Like, why isn't he being targeted?
Yes.
And to her credit, she does well with Quinn on their own. Like, you are maintaining this this like sort of like calm, collected facade of like everything's fine as the house burns down around you.
Yes.
And it helps.
I mean, it does. Like, I saw Brooklyn immediately go into like an outrage kind of during the veto meeting when the blow up happened. And I did say verbally, like, really, Joseph? Really, Quinn? Because they sat there listening to Tucker go off on us and didn't choose to include, and somehow Tucker or Quinn and Joseph aren't mentioned in these blowups. So I'm like, I have never started an alliance in the Big Brother house. So I'm like, I'm now being blown up for like starting something is crazy. Like, I've been brought into this stuff. So I was frustrated with them. I saw how Brooklyn popped off, and I saw how people were like kind of like feeling away about it. And I'm like, okay, I am the most vulnerable right now in this game. So I immediately went into damage control right after. And I went to, I think, to talk to T-Core was the very first person that I talked to, saying like, yes, this is true. But then I spun the block to say like, I am a loyal person. I am a loyal teammate. So I was part of this out of loyalty. And that's how it will be a benefit. So I used a vulnerable moment to show people that I am a loyalist. I will be loyal to the people, even at the detriment, of, being on the wrong side of the vote. So yeah, I knew I had to shift into gear socially, a different gear the second half, because then again, I played AI Arena. I didn't know like whether I was going to win AI Arena or not. So I wanted to set myself up socially to, no matter who I was sitting next to, I was going to be safe. So I remember T-Core and Chemo kind of being a little bit weird, like not really wanting to talk to me, but wanting to talk to me. Kind of like how they played like, we're going to have this conversation eventually. And nothing was coming about it.
Let me tell you, there was a whole sequence of events at the end of that week.
That I don't know of?
I probably not. I don't even think much of it made the episode, but like, obviously they wanted to keep you, but like Tucker was like, no, she's leaving. If Brooklyn wins AI Arena, she's leaving. And like at the time of like, like veto ceremony on for a few days, it was like, well, Chelsie might leave because they might want Chelsie to stay, but they haven't like made the decision. They're definitely doing this. Because Tucker's going to be so mad at them. And also, they might not even have Rubina because Rubina was on board to take you out because she was with Tucker, but back and forth because she talked to T-Core and Chemo, and they'd be like, no, we can't lose Chelsie. She'd be like, yes. And then she'd go and have a conversation with Tucker. She'd be like, Tucker, we're kind of feeling like, what if we keep Chelsie? And he's like, what? No. Like, that's stupid. And then she'd be like, you're right. Yeah, we should get rid of Chelsie. Wow. And then like the day of the eviction, after days of being like, we'll talk to Tucker, the day of the eviction, they still hadn't talked to him. And it was like, are they going to blindside Tucker? Because what if they just chicken out at the last second? It was still theoretically up in the air.
Yeah.
They have a conversation with Tucker in the HOH room. And at this point, Rubina and Chemo in particular are like, T-Core, you need to say something. Because every time we go to talk, we mention stuff and then you don't say anything. And so she's like, okay, I'll say something. And so they go and they're like, so Tucker, we're kind of feeling like we need to keep Chelsie, maybe. And he's like, what? No, we're not doing that. They're the heads of the snake. We need to get one of them for sure. And it's like, okay, here we go. They're going to push, right? No, they ended up making a new alliance with him in that moment.
What was the alliance?
That was the Frenzy alliance.
And I just found out about that the other day. The friend ZZZ. I saw hashtags of. I'm like, what is that?
It was literally like they went in to be like, this is our time to be firm with Tucker. We're keeping Chelsie, and they walked out with a new alliance with Tucker, and still voting out Chelsie.
What?
Tucker walks out, and T-Core immediately is like, I didn't like that.
Why did she say something?
That's what they were saying. And they were like, like, Tikor, you need to say something. You need to like, come on. So it's like, okay. Then he comes back in and they try again. And it took like 3 times before Tikor finally is like, okay, Tucker, I don't feel comfortable voting Chelsie out. And this is when she says, like, we basically agreed, like, as Black women, we are not targeting each other until at least jury. And of course, like, there's not as much he can say about that. But what he does say is like, okay, so you're not voting out Chelsie.
Oh, but
we're still voting out Chelsie, right? Yeah. And then he leaves again, and they're like, yeah, maybe we should just do it and not tell him.
So they were going to, that's crazy.
It was a wild ride. And then he goes to Cam and is like, they're trying to get you out, Cam, against Chelsie.
And then Cam didn't come. I found out throughout the season, there's things Cam knew that he didn't inform me on. I'm like, inform me, Cam, of like things that you hear. But I didn't know that. I knew, probably during Tikor's HOH that Tucker was really going hard for me. That's when I found out. But during that, I wasn't hearing anything. When you're on the block, people like act like you're a statue who can't talk, walk, breathe, nothing. So nobody was really telling me anything except Mackenzie. And that's when I decided, let me wrangle her in. She's the only one that's filling me in on conversations. And then Tikor day of was like, hey, me and Kimo are really fighting hard for you. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. So they told me so fighting hard, I mean, you're explaining to me what that looks like. So, oh my gosh. What kind of
Listen,
fight?
It was very hard for them.
It makes sense. It was a hard fight, but you weren't fighting hard. Oh my. What?
Yes.
No idea.
So ultimately, they were going to keep you no matter what, but it was looking a little sketchy here and there along the way. Then we get to that AI arena competition, and I don't know if you've heard about this, but people felt like, took you guys a little while to figure this one out.
Okay, let's. Yeah, I heard about that. I heard the edit made us look stupid, and let me say,
wasn't it live?
Oh, it was live. So here, let me just say, were we partially dumb? Yes, I will say that. But let me say, when you are in that position, first of all, the first 45 seconds to a minute was literally just jumbled words. That's it. There was no sentence being formed. So we're literally looking around like there's just words, letters everywhere. Letters. So that made us look dumb. But in that moment, we weren't dumb. But then when you are starting to put the words start to come together, I'm still sitting there like, what is this saying? So it took us a little long to do. But for me, I knew the first 2 pretty fast. It was the last one that I was trying to figure out. The moment that I like, read it backwards, that made sense. But here's the thing. It's stressful. You're fighting for your life. Yeah. This could make or break you going home. So there's so many things going on in your head as you're like playing this, you're in the arena. It's so intimidating. So it felt like week 1 all over again for me. And I'm like, oh, this is not good.
And we later see that even happens to Tucker, soon after this, right? Like,
yep. The moment he
misinterprets
felt like
the rules. Yep. And it's like, I think the AI arena you're definitely a lot more prone to making mistakes in that competition because it's so much more dramatic.
It is. And what people don't see is like the live show is happening and they're cutting to feeds of us and laugh and all that stuff. And then it's like, okay, head to the arena. It's time to head to the arena. And you're walking. And then I'm walking with 2 of my closest friends in the house. So I know I'm losing somebody really massive in this house, if not me. So I'm already in my head about what does next week look like? This sucks. So then it's like, oh, now use your brain and compete. I'm like, oh, that's a lot. I just want to cry right now. So it was not as easy as people see. And then I thought that competition, there was going to be only 3. Again, I'm glad I figured it out, but there was only going to be 3 to 5 like options of boards to place on the thing. I didn't know there were so many to choose from. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be much harder than I realized. So it was difficult. And the sayings were weird. So it was not easy. That's all I'm going to say. Glad I figured it out. But it was not easy. That arena was hard.
So You survive. You win the AI arena. It's Cam
Yes.
versus Brooklyn. Brooklyn leaves.
Yeah.
And heading into the following week, T-Core wins the HOH.
Mm-hmm.
And this is pretty huge for you.
Huge.
Not that there are like a ton of people that are looking to target you necessarily, but
Yeah.
like there are definitely some people in that house that would have continued the momentum of, of where that was going. Luckily for you, your biggest op was Joseph, who was throwing a bunch of comps. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Go, Joseph.
But T-Core wins, and she's gonna keep you safe, regardless. She's looking to if Mackenzie leaves, that's not great for you at this point in the game. Angela leaving doesn't hurt you at all. Like a lot of the potential options for people that could go. Cam leaving wouldn't have been great, obviously.
No, not at all.
But you being safe is pretty huge. It gives you the opportunity to rebuild,
Yep.
and rebuild you do, right? So like, as soon as T-Core wins, I assume you kind of felt, okay, I'm probably good.
Yeah, I felt safe immediately.
Yeah.
I knew I was safe. Yeah, I wasn't going on the block.
So like, what's the game plan here? Now that your entire game has been blown up, you've been on the block, you finally survived, you finally have the opportunity to start actually rebuilding and not just surviving.
Yep.
What's the game plan?
Gain trust back with every single person in the house, period. Like how do I show why I did what I did, why I was in alliances, and how I am loyal. So I played that card I was blue in the face. Like I made these decisions. I stand on it because if I am brought on a team, I'm going to be loyal to the team. And so I'm not going to necessarily apologize for being loyal to something I was brought into. And then I also cleared up the fact that I did not start these alliances. And then I tried as much as I can to deviate from like me. I was not the head. I was not the leader. It was Joseph and Quinn. So I knew it was influential, but I didn't want people to think about that. So it's like, how do I clean my slate, number one? And then how do I rebuild relationships with people that I felt like were a little bit iffy with me? And that was Rowena, T-Core, Chemo. I had felt a little iffy about. Tucker was just, I knew Tucker was never going to want me in the house. So like I was going to be cordial, but that's that. So really it was just get close to everybody in the house, show them how I can be an asset, and show them that I am a loyal person and a level-headed person. And also like I wasn't mean to Quinn or Joseph after the fact. Joseph completely decided to ignore me for 3 weeks after the fact because he thought I was mad, but I was not mean. I didn't give anybody the cold shoulder. So I wanted to show people like, yes, things can happen to me, but I'm the type of person that will, keep it pushing, forgive, and move forward. Like I'm a player you want to play with. That was my rebuilding strategy. Chelsie handled that really well. Like from my HOHs to my game being blown up. So how do I show that I am a level-headed player that could be an asset? That was my game plan. And then how do I show that to as many people as possible? And I think a thing that benefited me versus Brooklyn the week we were put on the block is how I responded to Chemo and T-Core. I could have been like, how dare you guys? You were in the collective. And I was very gracious with them. And partly because I love Chemo and T-Core. Like they were my friends. So it was hard for me. I understood why they wanted to keep Rubina. So I wasn't too upset by that. I was just like, y'all, I just wish you would have told me. That's it. Like water under the bridge, but next time just include me in that. So that was my game plan. Become somebody that is people respect how I handle certain situations. And I think that set me up really, really well for the second half of this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is also like, I think to some degree the return of Cam in the game, because he's starting to recognize, because let me tell you, listen, I'm a Cam fan myself.
I heard you were a Cam fan of his game.
That's interesting. I heard. I'm not that big of a Cam fan. More of a like, I think he, I think he's overly criticized for things than I think. But like, for a little while there, from week 2 when he agreed to be a pawn up until around week 6, it was like, what is this guy doing here?
Yeah. Yes. Welcome
Uh,
back, Cam.
but now he's talking to you about like, hey, I
Mhm.
feel like Leah and Mackenzie could be pretty valuable for us. And it's like, yeah, yep. Um, and so you start really, I think, connecting with really the two of them to some degree, but certainly Mackenzie, and then it really gets locked in the following week. But you're doing that work, you're keeping yourself safe, you're staying off the block. Cam wins the veto, which is even better for you,
Oh,
which means
so
he's
great.
now not in danger as well.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's one of Angela, Mackenzie, or Tucker that leaves. As long as Mackenzie doesn't go, like, this is a fantastic week for you.
Great week.
And so there's all of this talk about Angela versus Mackenzie, and where that could have gone. And Quinn's trying to push in one direction, but ultimately Tucker loses, and you get this shot at Tucker. And this is really like the rise to prominence of you in the game. Like, it was a short amount of time down there at the bottom,
Yeah.
and you quickly, because literally, like in terms of our ratings too, it was like, you have this week where you're on the block, and then the following week you are the highest rated player again.
That's crazy to me. That's insane. That's still crazy to hear. Glad to hear it. That's wild. That's wild because of the history of the people who left right after their HOH the week after.
Mhm.
So it's cool to see that I was, positioned really well after mine, after
Yeah.
being on the block.
So a large part of that is Tucker volunteers for the block. He loses the veto.
Yeah.
And he's on the block. And for a while, it was like, obviously, there's got to be some talks about taking out Tucker. But yeah, they'd have to be very careful about it. And there were. Angela starts having conversations,
Mhm.
and it gets blown up because it's Angela. Um,
Yes.
and Angela turning on Tucker alone was like, whoa, like, what's happening here? And then I was like, well, of course, it's Angela.
It's Angela. Yeah. That's the
So
statement.
then you have this conversation with Quinn,
Yeah.
and it becomes clear that there is a chance, that there's an opening here, that if you can get either Angela or Mackenzie, you will have the votes to take out Tucker,
Yeah.
if he stays on the block. But you obviously have to be very careful about it because this guy wins a bunch of competitions. So walk me through the Tucker flip.
So it was interesting. And by the way, like, I'll go longer than 2.5 hours to get through this, because there's a lot. But Tucker, so I learned early on that premature conversations could be a detriment. So I was trying to put fillers out there to see what are our options of the three. Like, what are our options? And when Angela started talking about it a couple of days before and it got blown up, I walked into the bathroom with Tucker and her going at it early in the morning. And I walked in and rocked straight back out. And then I heard like Tucker blew things up at just even the thought of people having conversations that should be had, because those arenas are unpredictable. So the fact that Tucker's upset that people are weighing different options was crazy to me. But I knew that like those conversations will spread. So for me, I started to put like minor fillers out there. But what I recognized early on, nobody was considering the option of Tucker losing. Nobody, at least not to my face. So I'm sitting
Mhm.
here, everybody's like, okay, is it Angela or Mackenzie? And I'm sitting in my head like, well, what about Tucker? Like, because it could be anything can happen. So it was kind of frustrating to me that nobody considered that option. And I understand he was a comp beast, but I also understand Big Brother, and you can't win everything. At some point, something's going to break down. So nobody was considering the option. And then I remember, I think Leah was taking a shower and I was like, hey, how are you feeling? And she just like, I said, how are you feeling about Angela and Mackenzie? And she pretty much was hinting about, Angela staying safe. But then I was like, what about Tucker? And all she said was like, I'm scared. I'm scared. Like, would not talk to me about it. Went to other people, would not talk to me about it. And I'm like, okay, everybody's afraid. How could when is the right time to really kick it into gear? We had a halfway mark party the day before eviction. Quinn and I were like wanting to talk for a couple days because we hadn't really talked since the blow up of our alliance. So I wanted to clear the air with Quinn, and then Quinn wanted to talk to me. So I think it was before the party. It was before the party. Quinn pulls me aside and he's like, let's go have our chat finally. So go upstairs, we're chopping it up, and we start talking about the potential eviction the next day. And I'm like, well, with Angela and Mackenzie, here are my thoughts. And I was like, well, with Tucker, Quinn said, everybody's afraid. I said, thank you. Thank you for admitting everybody's being like weak sauce in this house and not wanting to play big brother. So finally, in that moment, a level of trust was built between Quinn and I, because I'm like, okay, if this is the only person that is finally willing to have this extensive conversation about getting Tucker out. I knew Mackenzie. I think I had already talked to Mackenzie at the time. I knew Mackenzie was going to do what I was going to do. So I was like, hey, we got the votes. We're good. I got Mackenzie. And if I have Quinn, all I knew was I need Leah. And Leah's going to do what Mackenzie is going to do. So that's what I knew. So I told Quinn, yo, we got the votes. Have my conversation with Mackenzie. I wasn't as afraid of having a conversation with Mackenzie because she's on the block. Like, and I knew me advocating to keep her was going to be beneficial to me. So telling her I want Tucker out is not a bad thing. So, so anyways, I tell Quinn that, and that's when Quinn's like, oh, we can breathe. Like, yes, let's go for Tucker. It's interesting. He, during his speech when he won HOH next week, took credit for the whole orchestration, but I let him. It was both he and I that really solidified it. But so yeah, I knew that night before, and Quinn got nervous because he was like, she could flip on me, she could turn on me, and I'm like, no, I really want Tucker out. This not beneficial for me to flip on Quinn, and also I wanted to show Quinn that like you can trust me again. I have been the loyal player to you, like I've been since day 2, Quinn. Trust me here. So me gaining Quinn's trust back and me orchestrating the Tucker flip was the thing that I think helped me win this game. That was the pivotal point for me. I knew Tucker being out, I had more control over this house. So yeah, that's how the orchestration went. Literally the night before. Had it happened 2 days prior to that, Quinn probably would have went and ran and told Tucker, Chelsea's trying to get you out. Because he did that to Angela.
I think he did it to Angela because he knew that it was definitely going to get out that it was Angela.
That it was Angela.
I think it was an Angela thing more than it was a him ratting it out thing? For sure thing. But yes, the flip goes through, and this is massive. And it really, like, I think from here with Tucker, because Tucker leaving is so huge for you. There are a couple of major factors from this point forward, things that you do that like really lock you in. One is locking in MJ, and that's probably the biggest one. The other, the other one is like you survive two HOHs, because literally from here, there are only 2 HOHs that you do not control without yourself or MJ, right? Like it goes Quinn, you, Leah, Mackenzie, you, Mackenzie.
Yeah.
So there's really like controlling Mackenzie means, or locking in Mackenzie at the very least, means that you have now controlled like at least 3 of the next HOHs, aside from the ones you win yourself. And then surviving Quinn and surviving Leah were like the 2 big hurdles to get over. You weren't in a ton of danger with Quinn, but like he could have done damage to your structure here, and should have, because he obviously in many different ways kind of messes up this HOH. You do well to like retain his loyalty because of what you did for him in taking out Tucker, basically. That's how he feels. And because of that, he kind of like is a little too focused on building something with the group that took out Tucker and keeping you happy. It's funny because for most of the season, he was sort of like taking the Pentagon for granted and not like doing enough for you guys. And then he flips kind of too hard in the other direction at this point, where now he's doing too much to help you in particular.
And it felt sketchy. I was like, you had me for weeks. and then you blew me up. So it's like, what? How am I knew the moment that I had an opportunity. I never fully trusted Quinn after that. I gained a little bit more trust, but not 100%. There was always something in me that said he would flip, or he is not going to stay loyal to a 5, because I was traumatized. So yeah, when he was trying, I actually clocked it when during his HOH, he was trying to build an alliance with 7 people. And I'm like,
Yeah.
this is the remaining. And I told Kim, I was like, you see, he's trying, and Mackenzie, I'm like, you see, he's trying to build an alliance with everybody who's not on the block. Like, this is not, does anybody see this? Because it's giving sketchy. Nobody saw it. I'm like, I know what he's doing. And I didn't feel like he was really trying to protect me. He was trying to protect himself next week. So she tried, and it almost worked for sure. Because I think I was HOH the next week. It almost worked. Mm-hmm.
Almost, not quite.
Not
One of his big plans this week is he recognizes now that Mackenzie is very valuable, and he wants to really pull in Mackenzie and get close to her. He has a long conversation with her the night he wins. And this is where it was like, okay, you're not wrong, Quinn, but like, if you're going to put all your eggs in this basket, you better make sure you're actually able to pull Mackenzie, because there are some other people with some strings in her right now. And ultimately that's what happens. And I talked to Quinn about this, but like, you just talked to Mackenzie way more than he did. And you had a bond that existed far longer. Not that Mackenzie didn't, not that she disliked Quinn. She liked Quinn a lot. Sure. I'm sure you've seen the McQuinsey statements.
Yes, I have.
There.
I have.
So they were loving it that first night of Quinn's HOH.
Yes.
But ultimately, it's you that locks Mackenzie in this week. You talk with her a lot about Joseph, and you talk about how, hey, wouldn't it be great if the two of you, two women of faith, got to the end together, and she's also starting to connect to like really get closer to Cam at this point. So that makes a lot of sense for you as well, the three of you, and this is where like your end game really shapes up.
And like where things shifted with Mackenzie, because all of that was genuine. Like during when I was on the block, when she was the only one like kind of fighting for, not she was fighting for me, but only one really reporting back to me, I recognized like, wow, me kind of like saving her week 2 and building that rapport, it benefited me when I was in trouble. So then that next week, when she was on the block, I kind of returned that favor. Like, hey, you're going to be protected no matter what. These other jokers are trying to get you out, but I'm not. Like, so we were kind of on the same page and had each other's back when we were both on the block for those 2 weeks. And then I finally realized, like, she doesn't really have anybody. She's a great competitor. Like, and then we spent so much more time together that, like, I genuinely started to really like my time with Mackenzie. I'm like, this is not a bad option. And mind you, she's playing the game. Cam at that time, from my knowledge, because I'm not in his conversations with other people, I'm like, Cam's just coasting and cruising, and she's fighting for her life. I was like, I have a lot of respect for the way she's playing this game. Let me pull you in, because this might be the move, because I'm a little sketched out about Cam. The hardest thing for me, even though he was in my alliance and he was one of the only ones I trusted, I never knew where his head was at. And in this game, when you're trying to put pieces together of where people are at, there's already paranoia, but there's added paranoia when you're trying to figure out where in the world people are. So with Mackenzie, I never felt like I had to figure out where she was at. She was just going to tell me exactly everything where she was at. And I'm like, this is beneficial to not just take to final 5, but take all the way to the end. Because at that point, I'm like, who are 2 people that will take me to the final 2? And those are the people I need to ride or die for, because then I don't have to play in a way to survive. I just got to keep them close to me. Whether I win or lose, these 2 people will take me to the end. And I clocked that week, it's Mackenzie and Cam. So I chose, that's the double eviction was so controversial, but like that was intentional. Keeping Mackenzie was getting me to the final 2, because I knew that she would take me to the end. So that was all strategic. I knew all of that, but yeah, that week was pivotal with Quinn, and I just knew she trusted me more than not more than anybody. She still trusted Leah more at that time. So I was just putting in a lot of work.
She was still a little bit skeptical because of her Ballers Alliance theory.
Did you set the record straight that I was not in a Ballers of Alliance?
I haven't talked to Mackenzie, so.
So the fact that she actually spread that was crazy. First of all, I am not going to be in an alliance called the Ballers. Second of all, what? That was a shock. And I don't even think Ballers was an alliance. It was the Shakers and the Players, right?
I think it was the Ball Players or something like that.
That was so dumb.
I called them the Ball Boys, so I don't remember the real name.
Yeah, that was when I heard, she told me, like, are you in the Ballers? I'm like, no. I truly had not been in a named alliance since the Pentagon blew up. For the rest of the game, I wasn't in a named alliance. I wasn't like, hey, we're gonna make it to the end, but there was no like stamp on it that I did, because that was trauma for me. But yeah, the Ballers was crazy. I'm like, come on, y'all. The Ballers. Come on. That's more
I have to imagine that like some part of Mackenzie thought she was infiltrating it when she was getting close to you and Cam. You know what I mean? Like I'm getting in on the cool kid group here.
Yeah. Well, she was looking for a home, and I knew she was desperate to be loyal. And I knew that because she kept verbalizing that. Her and Angela. Like, I just want, I'm not working with anybody. Like, and I believed Mackenzie when she said that. I did not believe Leah when Leah said that. Oh, I'm not in an alliance. I'm like, I was aware of a lot of alliances. So I would hear them say that. I'm like, I knew you were in the final three with Mackenzie and Matt. Like, I know these things. So I knew Leah was lying to me, but I knew Mackenzie really wasn't. She was looking for a place to call home, and nobody still was picking up this free agent. And I was like, let me pick her up. Like, let me work with her. Because I was not in the named alliance either. And I needed numbers. And so Mackenzie was,
She was wrong about the Ballers Alliance, but she manifested her own, right?
She sure did. She sure did. And
took Quinn's spot.
Yeah, she sure did. She sure did take Quinn's spot. And Cam and I did prove, like, we were also going to show a loyalty and protect until the very, very end. So it was beneficial for all three of us to stick with each other. And it proved to be true. We saw us in the final three. So I think though it was controversial to some of the other people in the house and caused me to be in sticky situations with like Rubina and all of them, I knew the probability of Mackenzie winning versus the trio was really, high. So it's like, who am I going to lean and err on the side of? Somebody who's going to win. So I didn't feel too bad like linking with Mackenzie at the time.
Yeah. One of the easily most successful strategies in Big Brother for like individuals, at least, is just linking up with a person who will win a bunch of competitions and use those competitions to benefit you. I mean, classic.
Yeah. I'm glad I did. She didn't really start winning till like a lot to the second half, but I knew she was the first one to win the power up. She had won 2 arenas at that time. The girl can compete. So I was clocking all of that, and nobody else was. So I'm like, let me use this to my benefit, because I knew if I get her in my back pocket and she's winning a lot, that's a form of protection for me. So, and it was. So that was one of, I think, my best moves, was being like this with her.
Mm-hmm. And you also helped turn the house against Joseph this week. Not that it needed a ton of help at that time, but yes. You and this is a whole segment on the show, but like you get pretty frustrated with him talking about how he's going to beat everyone in the final 2 and all of that stuff. And ultimately, like, this really puts, like, I mean, without this, Quinn doesn't make the move he does, and Joseph stays that week, and Chemo leaves, and then both Joseph and Quinn are in the game, and Joseph is still, like, basically, like, at this point in the game, Joseph is the only person who really looks at you as a threat, who, like, recognizes, not that Quinn doesn't see you as a threat, but, like, who really recognizes that he needs to be, like, doing something about you.
Yes.
And then Quinn after that is like the only person left who is capable really of recognizing that they need to do something about you. And then after that, there's like Leah is the only one who can do anything about you now. And then things shift a little bit. Chemo and Rubina did start to wake up a little bit toward the end about like doing something, but by then it was just too late. So all of the stuff with Quinn, I'm sure you have seen the sick nasty memes.
I sure did see all the sick nasty memes. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Leah ends up using the veto, which is huge for you because it gets Joseph on the block. You didn't even have to push that hard for it. It was mostly just like the sentiment in the house, and it was the only thing he felt he could do to not piss people off like you. And you know, also to T-Core's credit, he really didn't want to do T-Core. And so he puts Joseph on the block, and now this I think is probably one of the most controversial strategic plays of the season, is the last minute flip based on the speech, because obviously it's huge for you that Joseph leaves over Chemo. Like great play, but really came together at the last possible second.
Yeah, that was one of those where it's like, Chelsie, what are you thinking? What are you like? Chemo staying is the best thing for me. The speech just solidified that. I was so up in the air already. The speech solidified that. And I was up in the air, like, especially even during those 2 minutes that we had to debate. I was like, I was still iffy. And granted, I'm telling you, people weren't really talking about the direction they were going into the very last minute because of the unpredictability of the AI arena. So it's not like I had a lot of time to ruminate with other house guests of my options until it was too late, which is the beauty of the twist. You don't have a lot of time to think. So for me, I was always up in the air. I was frustrated with Joseph. And I also knew Joseph, he flipped the majority alliance that he started and lied about it. He didn't talk to me for 3 weeks until he was on the block or until Tucker was gone. Then he like remembered I was here and started to talk to me as a person in the house. And then I was looking at the structures of the house. Every week I would evaluate the structures, and I saw, okay, you have the trio that's here. But then you have Leah, Quinn, and Joseph. That was a trio I was most worried about. Those three. So I'm like, okay, he's never in his life ever going to put up Leah, Quinn.
Too sick nasty.
She's too sick nasty and all the other 20 things that he said about her. And so he was never going to go after her. And neither was Joseph. I saw their googly eyes towards her.
Their
and
little challenger situation.
Oh my gosh, yes. So that was interesting. So I saw that and I'm like, okay, Leah's not going to be an option ever for them. So and I knew at that time I felt Leah was my biggest threat in the house because I felt like she was tightly aligned with the two people who were going to come after me. And she had never been on the block. So I'm like, okay, I don't feel like she's really vibing me. If she's not going to go on the block, how do I weaken her game? And the weakening her game was not getting Chemo out because Chemo was looking at her sideways. Weakening her game would get Joseph out. So that became a no-brainer. And then the speech, I was like, well, this made it very easy for me. Let me go ahead and just vote. And I'm like, even if I'm on the wrong side of the vote with Joseph, I'm okay if Joseph stays because he's not going to beat me in anything. So I'm like, okay, that's the wrong side of the vote. I'm okay being on. I didn't know Mackenzie was going to vote that way as well. So that really worked to my benefit and made me trust Mackenzie more. I'm like, okay, we didn't plan that. That was just a spur of the moment. Nah.
So that doesn't happen on Big Brother. It's wild that it happened.
It happened. And that was just like her and I annoyed that week and just knowing Joseph wasn't really about me and her. And then their speeches really just did it in for us. We're like, okay, whatever. Let's just vote.
Yeah, and I do think this gets lost a little bit in hindsight, but like you were having conversations about doing this for a couple of days prior. Like it's not like you both were like, yeah, we're always evicting Chemo, and then both just happened to flip and change your minds. You had been contemplating and discussing for a while.
Yeah, that was one that was like this for a minute. Um, but at the time, I'm like, I don't know if we have the votes to get chemo out. So I was just up in the air. I always considered all options every week in the arena when the arena was still present, because that's the smartest thing to do. Like, even out the playing field of who you're thinking about. So I always considered every single option. That was just a part of the game that I played. So yes, Joseph was a huge consideration for it. At the same time, that was one where I was like, and early on, I didn't really care, because like, Joseph staying doesn't necessarily hurt me because I can beat him. But as time went on, I'm like, the more I think about this, I have to weaken the game of people who are the most threats to me. And Joseph became way easier to consider towards the end. Then this, I was still unaware of what everybody was doing. Then the speeches, I was like, well, I know what I'm doing. This is very easy for me. But it was always a topic of conversation, but I was never solidified on who I was going to vote for until that moment.
And did you recognize at the time, because basically one of the reasons, because there is an argument that could be made, which is like taking out chemo makes sense because he's part of a trio at the final 10. And if he survives, then he's part of a trio at the final 9, and that's really dangerous.
Yeah.
But we knew specifically for you that, like, as long as T-Core is in the game, Chemo and Rubina will never turn on you, will never do anything against you. But I don't know how much you knew that at the time.
I was aware of that. So when I looked at the structure, a lot of what I did every week, I would evaluate what are people's hierarchy and relationships, because I realized that this season people really voted based on like ability a lot of the times, not necessarily what was like the smartest thing for them. So I knew we had the remaining players were a little bit more emotionally led with how they vote. And I knew that the flip of Rubina's week. Like, okay, I'm dealing with some players that will make decisions based on who they like, not necessarily what's best for their game. So I was looking at my relationship with the trio versus everybody else's relationship with them. And though I'm not in the trio, I was kind of like, I was very close to being to all three of them versus everybody else that was remaining. So though the power structure was a threat to everybody else in the house, so long as T-Core was here with them, they're not necessarily a direct threat to me. And then them three staying in here allowed everybody else to not look at me, but to look at them. So on both ends, I was stuck in the middle, and that was the best position. So the longer the trio was there, the better it was for my game. And that wasn't true for everybody in the house, but it was true for me. Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly how we saw it. And very, very Vanessa, I think, to sort of like use a trio as a shield.
Yes.
But honestly, better than Vanessa in the sense that, like, you had that trio locked down, whereas Vanessa was always in a little bit of a battle with her trio.
Yes. But relationally, like, I had it locked down with a trio ever since I mended the relationship with Rubina after the Cedric stuff. So, and then Chemo and I never really had beef. And T-Core and I were always close. And I spent time with them more than like a lot of the house guests. So yeah, I was like, them staying around is like, eventually the number thing will be a problem, but it's not now. And they're 3 numbers for me. So let's keep them around and then let everybody else go after them, which was my strategy going into Leah's week. Like, let me now capitalize on that.
Yes. And I found it to be a very funny situation with Cam this week, where, like, basically the entire week he was just like, listen, I don't care who leaves. Just tell me. I just want to be on the right side of the vote.
I cried. I felt so bad because that wasn't my intention. But after like the 2 minutes that Auntie Julie gave us, I'm thinking Cam read the room and this is gonna, like, you know, I thought he was like, this was gonna be, Cam's gonna vote with us. I should have, hindsight, that's one thing I wish I would have done differently of the whole game. I wish I would have just gave Cam like a little wink or been like, hey, I'm voting Joseph out. It was that simple. And it wasn't intentional. I just wish you have 2 minutes. You're going so fast. I didn't know there was so much going on, but I wish I would have paused and told him what I was doing. Because that's all he wanted. He really didn't care. I know, I felt so bad. That was such a terrible alliance. I was a bad team member. I apologize publicly.
Well, luckily you win the next HOH, so there's not a lot he can say about it after that.
Yes, that's accurate.
But So yes, you win the next HOH. Quinn is devastated. And I don't know if you've seen the image, but like there's just a great shot of Quinn at the end of that episode, just like in tears. Great in the sense that like, you know, we're still finding entertainment in people's trauma.
Which y'all love. A lot of trauma.
But you win this HOH, and this is where really like I had been pretty critical of Quinn's HOH week because I felt like appeasing you was not the play, because doing a favor for somebody is never as good in Big Brother as putting them in a position, like doing a favor and hoping they return the favor is never as good as putting them in a position to have to return the favor, if that makes sense. Like
100%. Yeah.
Like being like, I'll do this favor for Chelsie by taking out Joseph, then she will return the favor for me, is not as good as I will do a thing that might make her a little upset, but next week she still has Joseph to deal with. Like she's not in as good a position to deal with me, is how I generally feel. But and we'll talk about that with Leah's week as well. But it frees you up. You are initially looking at, you put up Angela and Chemo. You are looking at potentially taking a shot at like maybe the trio, maybe Angela. You kind of like, you think about backdooring Leah for a while. And I think like, I tried to explain this to Quinn as best I could because it was quite a series of events. But I would love to hear from you.
Okay.
The series of events that starts with, because after Mackenzie wins, and we'll talk about OTEV, but after Mackenzie wins OTEV,
oh, Tim, that's trauma again.
you guys lock in on Chemo as like the target, and you're like, we're definitely not using this veto. And then Angela, it's either the next morning or the following morning, comes up to you and she says, hey, I need to tell you, I have another number one to betray. Leah has been working with, she's conspiring with Quinn and they're working with the trio. And it seems as though you talk to Cam and you do kind of both agree, like, it feels like she's telling the truth. And then you kind of quickly realize, no, she's not telling. What am I thinking? Nope. And it goes to, okay, well, we need to target Leah. Well, wait a minute. Why don't we just target Quinn? So that's my kind of perspective, is that like, because of Angela's information, it kind of got you thinking, made you realize maybe I should go back to my Leah plan. And then after you thought about the Leah plan, you were like, well, if Quinn's a better competitor and you have Mackenzie and Cam feeling like, yeah, he's a better physical competitor, we can beat Leah more easily, then we might as well do Quinn. And that it sort of just like happened like that, like kind of just like, it kind of just popped up into existence out of nowhere.
Thank you to Angela. It sure did. Because it was originally I was tossing up the idea of Chemo. Chemo and Angela had, I think, they had already been on the block that week before. So at this point, they're expendable. So I'm like, okay, that's not additional blood, which is fine. I had already put up Angela before, par for the course. And Chemo was also the safest option for me.
You told Angela she was the Taylor of the season.
The Taylor, I sure did. I was partly like trying to be like, yo, Angela, use this.
Yeah.
Because if you're the pawn, the perpetual pawn, it's getting you far. So just take it and be quiet. But I knew she wasn't going to go far. But that was just trying to get Angela to just, calm down a little bit in the house. Because her on the block was really difficult for Angela on the block versus Angela off the block, two different people. So originally I was up in the air about Chemo and Angela, but then I'm also in the back. So the Chemo thing was, I was trying to make amends with Cam. Like, hey, if you feel like Chemo is your biggest threat and I just kept him in and now there's some distrust, like I want to show you that I am considering you in this game and putting Chemo up, and we'll figure out what that looks like.
The Chemo Cam thing was so funny because and
then all of a sudden
really lived in Cam's head for so long,
which was so crazy. Like, what do you have to be worried about? It's Chemo. And then all of a sudden Cam's going hard in the paint to get Quinn or Leah out, and I'm like, well, I just put chemo up for? I'm confused. So the chemo thing really was to mend things for Cam because I knew I lost his trust. And he was my biggest priority in making sure he trusted me. But then when he's going hard in the paint, when we hear about this alliance thing, Cam really clocks in, well, let's Quinn or Leah. And he starts to go hard in the paint. And then it starts to get me thinking, like, that's actually really smart. The trio was good with me. Them staying is protection for me. And if Cam's okay with it, that's even better. And then between Quinn and Leah had not won anything. Oh, she had only won one veto. And then Quinn had won one HOH. But I'm like, in my head, if you watch Big Brother, the later the seasons get, the more physical the competitions get. So I'm like, if I'm thinking about Endgame, I have to start thinking physicality. Quinn is the better option. And I never trusted him. And for me, I never fully trusted him. And for me in the game, I'm like, the whole return the favor thing, I never played that way. I'm like, this is probably my only time to take a shot at one of the two. So I don't want to not take the shot this week and then regret it. So I rather risk taking the shot knowing that the house was going to probably go where I asked them to go by that time in the game. I'm like, I think Quinn is a good option to get him out. So that's what we did. It was then Otev.
Well, I assume that like the reason, because like I think the biggest jump is like you'd been talking about Leah for so long, and then out of nowhere Quinn popped up as an option. If I had to like guess, my guess would be that he became an option at that point because over the previous days he made it more and more and more clear that he was unwilling to drop Leah from his alliance proposals. And so if you took the shot at Leah, you'd be pissing him off anyway.
Yes.
And so you felt like you were losing both by taking the shot one way or the other. And that's part of why he was then in consideration.
That is 100% true. And you're reminding me of a conversation. So I didn't feel like at the time I had the votes to get Leah out with where Leah stood at the house. I hadn't really read her and her relationship with the house. It wasn't until really after Janky World that people were very vocal about Leah. So prior to that, Leah was still under the radar, hadn't been on the block. And so I'm like, if I put her up on the block, that's crazy out of the blue. Quinn, that would be insane. And then he'd still be here next week. And he has the ability to win a HOH more than a lot of the other house guests. So I'm like, okay, that's not smart to get Leah out because I feel like she still may stay. And now I have both of them against me. So then Leah comes up to the HOH room. I'm skipping ahead, but this will get me to why I considered Quinn. And she's kind of like throwing Quinn under the bus yet again. And I had since Pentagon days warned Quinn over and over again about Leah dogging him. And I'm glad that you were very clear with him in your because people, let me just tell you, there were some stands out there, not Chelsie stands, who hated me for being really honest about kind of the Quinn and Leah thing. And I was just reiterating stuff that I heard. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But I had told him for weeks, yo, might not want to trust that. Yo, I don't think she has your best interest. And I'm still trying to have Quinn's back. So then when yet again, she's kind of just like throwing and like Quinn is like dispensable to her. I'm like, okay, I can use this to finally get Quinn. When after OTEV, we can go back to it. After OTEV happens, we're rushed in conversations to do the renom. It's earlier than expected. So we have like 10 minutes to get ready. Quinn comes upstairs and he's breathing all heavy and blah, 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 blah. And that's when I tell him, hey, like, I kind of tell him, why are you trying to defend somebody who so easily is willing to throw you out? Like on the priority scale, he still prioritized Leah when she had done way more against his game than I had ever done. At that point, Quinn should be trusting me, to be honest. I'm like, what are you? I haven't dogged your game. So I was so frustrated with Quinn. That's why I put him up, because she could stab Quinn in the back and he would turn around and say, thank you. So that's when I was like, she is your priority. And not saying I wasn't other people's priority, but he would do anything for that girl. And I knew they were the only two I had to worry about. So I was like, oh, that's easy. At that point, I'm like, all Quinn had to do was say he didn't trust Leah and I would have kept him. That's all he had to say. All he had to say was, right, I see it. I'm clocking it. it's not the right time, but eventually I'll go after Leah. Had he done that, I would have put Leah up on the block. And that is the 100% truth. But he wouldn't do it.
That is what I felt at the time. Yeah, it's yeah. I liked what you said about stabbing him in the back and turning around. He would turn around and say, "You know what? That was a great stab." The word phenomenal comes to mind.
You know what? That was pretty sick, nasty.
Yeah.
That, for me, I'm like, I wanted Quinn to be so much better than he was in that game. And I'm like, the fact that he just was so unaware of his placement in the house and unaware of Leah that he had goggles on for her, and that was detrimental to my relationship with him and the priority level that I was with him. So I said he is the better option. That was the moment. I'm telling you, if that he would have lasted way longer in the game had he just been like, "You're right, Chelsie, I see it," and he refused. And it just it gave me joy to put him on the block. At that point, I'm like, at this point, Quinn, you're asking me to do this. Like, why couldn't you just say you didn't trust her? So that was my logic.
You did seem to come to regret it a little bit afterward, though. It did
Yes.
seem like you came back around.
I did. Quinn, and maybe that's his superpower. He has the ability to be so he's just so likable as a human.
Mhm.
And I love Quinn. Like that, I adore him. And so putting him on the block kind of very last minute without being able to have extensive conversations with him, that did mess me up, especially given the fact he had just saved me that week before. So I was starting to feel some regret, like, okay, I wish I would have had more conversations with him. But that didn't come down to that wasn't intentional. We just didn't have time. We were rushed. So had we had more time, I honestly think, because I was up in the air with Quinn all week, even about where to influence the house to vote, because he was trying to throw a lot of stuff at me that I was almost believing. So that was a very up in the air thing. I did start to regret it a little bit because I wanted him to go really far in the game. But as I thought I was like, this is a moment not to make a heart decision. This is a moment to make a logical decision. And unfortunately, the two did not align. So that hurt. I didn't want to see him go, but he was giving me no choice. Like, you're still not willing to believe us, what we're saying about Leah? Are you kidding me? So I was like, okay, you got to go. Sorry. I'll hug you later after the finale.
Yeah. Be his wingman. We don't really have to talk about Otev much. It's just pretty funny.
That was so terrible, and I apologize to all the viewers and production for setting all this up for it to be done like this.
It was such a great representation of the season, though.
I was like, I know they're gonna have a field day playing this and even editing it, because this is us. This is us. This makes sense for our season. Doesn't make sense, and that is the accurate description. So that was miserable. Oh my gosh.
So after you put Quinn up, this is a big moment, because it feels like how you are handling the fallout with Leah is going to be very important. And initially, it was like, not well, because Leah is in the in one of the bedrooms talking to Angela about how, you know what, screw it. If I win HOH next week, I'm putting up T-Core and Chelsie right next to each other. That's the only way to get one of the two of them out, and I want to put two of them right up on the block. And I was like, this is also something that doesn't happen in Big Brother. You don't actually make a bold move and put up the two biggest power players right now in the game. And I think that's a phenomenal move. Like, I think that would actually be great for you.
Oh, should have done it. Should have done it. 100% should have done it.
There's something that gets in the way, a couple of things. But one is, she has a long conversation with you in the HOH bathroom night before or 2 nights before.
The night before.
Night before the HOH. And I remember talking about it at the time, being like, it wasn't like they became best friends or anything. It wasn't like a ton of significant progress was made. But I think I even said at the time, like, this is one of those things where if something comes of it, we will remember it, because this opened a door. And it definitely seemed to, because the following week, Leah wins HOH, and I'm like, oh my god, is this house about to like shift again?
I
Because this is
know.
like this. I think I called it like this is like the exhaust vent on the Death Star. Like they have found like the one thing that could blow up this entire game.
Yeah.
And then right at the last second, she backed out. She was like, I'm not gonna make the shot. And then the rest is history.
The rest is history. And I remember being in DR, and that janky world, which was the most traumatic week of my entire 27 years of existence. I was miserable. But that week, like that's when the whole house started to see my level of influence with how many times I was being called to the DR on a week that I didn't win. Like I was just, I had just won HOH. I'm kind of at the bottom now, wasn't able to compete. So you're able to hear who's getting called up. Inside the house, you're not hearing that stuff. If you're not in the room with that person, you don't hear who's getting called to the DR. So you don't have a good picture of who's really getting called a lot. Janky World almost jacked me up because I was up there all week and people started to verbally say like, what is Chelsie doing up there? Even Leah was like, it's almost as if you won HOH. That started to be a narrative in Janky World. And I'm like, oh shoot, this is going to mess up my game because they're starting to see how much of influence I have and how much I'm in the DR actually in the house. Nobody really paid attention to that. So, which they should have kind of. So when I was getting called up a lot and a lot of the narrative was about the thought of Leah putting me up. And when I'm having these conversations all the time in Janky World, I'm like, okay, this is actually like a consideration. But in the DR, I said a lot, and I don't know if it aired, like Leah, I have to take a shot at her eventually, or else like I knew we were always going to butt heads. But for me in the DR, I was like, if she doesn't take a shot at me this week, she will never have the chance to take a shot at me again. I don't know if that was aired or not, but I said it multiple times in the DR, like she should probably, because if she doesn't, she will never have that chance again, which is why me getting Quinn out, I had the same sentiment. If I don't, I felt like I never would again. So I knew that was Leah's only chance of trying to get me out again, because I was not, the only way Leah was going to beat me really in a HOH type competition is if I wasn't playing it. So beat me and Mackenzie, like there's just no shot. So she should have. And I was nervous that she was going to. And that's why I was frustrated with Cam. They think it's because of the whole bed situation. I'm like, he made a deal with Leah to keep him safe and didn't consider. And he had foreknowledge that Leah was my biggest threat. Yet he made a deal that only protected him. So I was just further getting frustrated because I'm like, I've won several HOHs where I've protected Cam. And now you're going to make a deal that only thinks about you next to somebody who doesn't vibe with me. Felt like, okay, now I'm alone and what is going on? So that was a lot of the Janky World frustration, is like, I felt like I was playing this game for Cam and I was getting frustrated by that. And he didn't even consider me that week. Why would you make it and then decide, let me go on one leg holding this marshmallow when he knew Leah stands like that in everyday life. She cooks on one leg. She has conversations on one leg. Why would you do that? I was so frustrated with him.
I could be wrong. I feel like I remember feeling like hearing about the competition and hearing about you talk about the competition and thinking, oh, Cam like threw the comp to her. And then watching the episode and being like, oh, he just made a deal to stand on one leg. But it makes a little more sense with you saying that she lives on one leg.
He made a deal to stand on one leg for a girl who literally stands on one leg for half of her existence. So, and he thought he would. At that point, I'm like, there's no way he thinks he's going to win this standing on one leg.
His diary room, I believe at the time, was like, I'm an athlete. I have great balance. I'm definitely going to beat her on one leg.
I pay attention to those things in the house. So when he said one leg, I was like, oh, no, Cam. No, Cam.
You're like on the sidelines, like,
I'm dying. And then in Janky World, I can't show like, no, Cam.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just sitting there all poised, and Cam just off the bat, we weren't even in day one of Janky World. I'm pissed off at him for now having to make me work like overtime to keep myself protected. And a lot of fans or people that watch the show were like, how dare Chelsie be skeptical about Cam? He went hard for her during Janky World. And I'm like, he should have. What?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, yeah.
did we forget that, like, me being in power, choosing to not put him up or anybody, that's a form of protection. So it's like, yeah, he protected me during Janky World, but I had a lot of times where I had power to do something and chose to protect him. So it's been very one-sided, a lot of that conversation. But I'm like, yeah, Cam, because you decided to go on one leg, holding that marshmallow, the least you could do is advocate for me for Leah. And I'm grateful that he did. He really had my back that week, as I hear. I didn't get to watch back on it, but I'm grateful he did, because he is a huge reason that he deviated the conversation from me towards Leah. And I'm so grateful. Like, that could have been a different story without him. So I'm going to publicly say, like, and again, I'm not aware of the conversations Cam is having with other people. So I find out after the fact from my parents, like, no, he really had your back. And because Cam wasn't coming to me saying, yo, FYI, I'm pulling that stuff out of him. So had he been more
It's funny because he did that with Leah in like week 2 or 3, where he was like, hey, I'm looking out for you. And then she got so pissed at him for doing that.
And I would have appreciated that. I was like, just tell me that you're working on my behalf. And it didn't feel in Janky World. I felt like Cam is now deviating back to like being under Leah's wing. Now and then being under Mackenzie's wing. He's deviating back to let me just be, eye candy to these girls to stay safe, but not consider me. So I wasn't hearing their conversations. I'm like, okay, he's just protecting himself, not me. So when I hear he's advocating for me, I'm forever grateful. He really was like day one for me. And yeah, I give him credit for keeping me safe that week for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough spot because like literally you're basically trying to, you have two main arguments. One is they're a trio over there. The other is like, hey, I've got you. You do me a solid, I'll do you a solid, which is like a really hard argument to make after what you just did to Quinn. Right? So
I was shocked that it worked. That's
right.
I'm like, what kind of? If you don't take a shot at me, that'd be the dumbest move for you. But I did have a strong argument in numbers, and that's why it's like I was a lot. That was them being numbers and controlling the vote moving forward was accurate. It was completely accurate. That was an accurate factual statement. That was a threat in the House. But what I chose to withhold was I was a bigger threat than that.
You were also in a trio, and it was a much more dangerous one.
It's more dangerous one that nobody decided. So everybody's like, oh, she went and was like throwing out these random lies and blah, blah. No, trios are dangerous. I just negated to share that I'm more dangerous than that trio. And I'm also in another one. So it's like, and that's what I shared in my jury. Like when Angela was asking me that question, I'm like, I just chose to withhold a lot of stuff and really go hard on a different narrative. So the fact that I was believed fully or other options weren't considered was crazy to me. That was so crazy to me. And that's when I knew really when I survived Janky. Oh, this is what, when I survived Janky World after Angela and Leah won veto and had the power to get me out.
HOH and 2 vetoes. They not only did they win both vetoes, but they had the power to theoretically, because Leah doesn't win that competition thing, but like theoretically then reverse and do the original plan, which is you and Teak were on the block at that point. They had a second chance.
They had a second chance. And when they didn't make that move, I said, I've got this. This is mine. If I'm smart, if I'm calculated, this is mine for the taking. And I was so nervous the whole week. Never felt really like I had anything solidified Janky World. I was always up in the air, like Leah could put me up, especially because I told her to her face that she was a renom option for me. So I was very honest with her. Like, this is what I'm considering putting you up. So the fact that I was very verbal with her about where I stood with her, I'm like, she has every right and reason to put me up. She should be a little bit concerned about me. So I was nervous all the way up into they both decided to or Angela decided to use it and Leah didn't. Once that veto was done, I said, this game is going to be very, very, very different for me moving forward. And it was. So that was crazy.
There is one last kind of challenge here, or maybe not one last, but like one more challenge here, which is that the vote is between Rubina and T-Core.
Oh.
And obviously for you, keeping T-Core is better. For a bunch of reasons. T-Core is a bigger threat in front of you. T-Core staying is never coming after you and is going to keep Chemo from coming after you, and so on and so forth. It's obviously bad for either Mackenzie or Cam because it just helps you. And so this is like the spot where it was like, okay, Mackenzie is here to play because she wants to take out T-Core, and if she does this, all of a sudden Mackenzie can become the front runner, like just take it right out from under Chelsea's feet. And it seemed like she was going against your wishes for the first and one of the only times in the game. Well, maybe not the first, she voted out Cedric, but like first time in a while since you locked in, and was indicating that she was willing to do her own thing. And losing T-Core does put you in a worse spot here. It opens the door for a few different people. For Mackenzie, it opens the door to win the game by cutting you and getting to the end, because she doesn't have to deal with T-Core anymore. For Cam, it opens the door because he's also made this move. He could similarly do the same thing. For Chemo and Rubina, it opens the door because now they don't have T-Core telling them don't go after Chelsie, and they're starting to have conversations like, hey, don't you think Chelsie is kind of like the person to take out? And so, you know, it was a pretty locked in situation, but this one thing still left some doors open of potential threats. And as you mentioned, like you weren't able to push hard enough to keep T-Core. I don't even know if you could have at that point.
I couldn't, because Mackenzie and Cam came up to me saying like, hey, it's T-Core. And I was like so devastated because I'm like, and I couldn't show that to Mackenzie and Cam because they verbalized to me that they were kind of afraid of like my relationship with T-Core versus theirs. So they were a little bit kind of iffy on where does my loyalty really lie. So I couldn't be like, you guys, no, what? I couldn't do that. And like, because we were in Janky World, there's a lot of things that we couldn't do or really outwardly say. And then, and they already had Angela on board, Leah was on board. And so, and the narrative since Tucker was in the house was that Chelsie and T-Core in a final two. So me advocating for somebody who I knew was a really strong social player would not set me up well. So I could not, and I wish I could have, but it wouldn't be smart for me to advocate to keep T-Core in the house. Especially because Angela was writing that narrative so hard. And I heard in her conversation with T-Core, she asked why. She was like, why didn't you put Chelsie up during your HOH and went back a couple weeks? So I was like, why am I even in the conversation with T-Core right now? Like this is, so I started to realize the house is threatened by T-Core and I. This is not good. So, but getting T-Core leaving the house opened up the door for like Rubina and Chemo to come after me or to latch towards me. I knew that because they just lost one of their trio members, and Mackenzie and Cam weren't really rocking with them. Leah just put up and evicted their closest ally, and Angela was a part of that. So who do they have left? Me. So I was like, okay, let me use this to, and even I use it on Rubina, like, yo, the house wants T-Core out, but it is a benefit to your game to kind of separate that. So I use that as leverage to draw them a little bit closer to me. So it could have went either way, depending on how I leveraged my relationships. But yeah, the house had so many and should have taken me out so many times. And I am shocked that they did it. I'm with you guys. Like, guys, like
I think it's a good balance that you had to align. You had to walk there because you can push harder to save T-Core, but like there's already this razor's edge that you're walking on with Mackenzie and Cam, where they're doing something that you don't want them to do.
Yes.
And you want to get them back to a place where they're going to do the things that are good for you again. And so you can either try to push there and get them back on board then, but then maybe lose them later, or you can accept it as much as you can and try to just roll with it as much as you can. And I think in that spot it worked. I think, I don't know if it was this point, and I don't know how much Big Brother Canada you've watched, but I think we talked about the Netta and John situation and how there was a moment in that season when Netta had pushed to get her way in one spot, where then because of the comp outcomes, it never even mattered. And then later, almost like you can maybe trace it back to that moment. John changes his mind about what he was going to do, and if she had maybe just given him that one, maybe he takes her, and so on and so forth. So like there is like, it was a loss, but like it was a forced loss.
In the end, it benefited.
I mean, given the competition outcomes, you were always going to lose that week.
So exactly. And one thing I was like, if there is a trio to upset, which one do I upset? I think I'm going to upset the trio that isn't really a threat to me when it comes to competitions. The only person that I was remotely like, this person's going to win competitions is Mackenzie. I wasn't worried about Cam. So I'm like, I'm not going to upset Mackenzie, who has a really high probability of just winning, versus Chemo and Rubina, who aren't. And if Chemo and Rubina win, I purposely was not going to win Otev. At that time, I think I was like 4 competitions to Mackenzie's like 5 or 6 at that time. Or yes, we were very close in competition wins at that time. I forgot. But I'm like, the more she wins, the better it is for me, because she's going to be seen as a threat. So for Rubina and Chemo, I'm like, if Mackenzie's still here and they don't have T-Core, I can always spin the block to say, you see how many competitions she's won? So yes, T-Core was a loss, but at the end, I'm like, I still keep somebody who can win. And yeah, I piss off maybe 2 other people, but they need me essentially in some ways. And I've had a relationship where I can build. So it was the best. It wasn't ideal for me. And even Cam realized that a couple weeks later. He was like, yeah, T-Core was probably a loss. I said, I couldn't really fight hard that week, but it wasn't a good move for you or for me. So
it could have been a good move for him if he had a different plan, but
I don't know what the plan.
He didn't have a different plan.
Oh,
that's the thing where it's like it's hard to like once you realize that Cam and Mackenzie are always taking you to the final 2, it's almost like nothing they do matters, because they're always playing for a losing end game.
Yeah.
So then it becomes, just to give you a window into the analysis perspective, then it becomes, for me, it's like the best move for somebody like Mackenzie is to mess up what she wants, because what she wants is bad for her. So it's like she has to like make this mistake, and then whoops, Chelsie gets caught in the crossfire because of it, and that's actually her best move. Like, you know what I mean? It's like a weird spot to try to like analyze, like what is their actual best position from here.
Yeah, and her HOH that next week definitely didn't help her at all, because her whoops could have been like, oh, let me go against Cam and Chelsie, not go with their wishes to put Leah up, and Leah come after me. Oops, that could have been her oops moment. And she didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, the whiplash was wild, because it went, Leah's gonna put up Chelsie and T-Core. Oh no, she didn't. Mackenzie's making a move. She's gonna become the front runner. Oh no, she's not.
Yes, that I went into overtime, and I knew, I was like, okay, this might still be a detriment to my game, but that was one. It was like calculating my decisions of like, how hard do I go on certain people? Like going hard on Tucker wasn't necessarily smart, because he has a high probability to win things. But I'm like, Joseph, Leah, that's chances I'm willing to take, because I have like faith in my ability to win as well when I needed to. So, but like going hard for Leah, and I didn't know, like, and she had just taken out T-Core. So I'm like, the pretty much majority of the house, bar Angela, was against, bar Angela and Mackenzie were against Leah. Like they were not about Leah. So my argument to Mackenzie is just like, the whole house is not about this. You want the least amount of blood on your hands. This is the move.
It's again the same mistake Quinn made.
Yes. Didn't tell her, terrible move for you. Great move for me. But I'm like, yo, the house will essentially be rocking with you, because the whole house is in agreement with this. So yeah, that was a really bad move on her end, but the beneficial for me. Yeah. That was whiplash for me. I was shocked that actually happened. I think I was eating like a ramen noodles one night, like talking to the camera, like, I can't believe I just convinced Mackenzie to get Lee. I was shocked. Like, yes, I was the mastermind and all that stuff, like looking back, but like I was shocked at a lot of the times that that it worked. I was like, Mackenzie, what? I can't believe this is real.
Many people could not.
I was so shocked. I was like, wow, this girl really does like it. But it did show in that moment. It showed like, yes, she was gullible to me, but it showed like a lack of awareness of the game.
Yeah.
With her, with Cam, with a lot of the remaining players, the only person I felt like was really aware was Chemo that was left. And Angela was like too chaotic. So
yeah, like Angela was aware it was just in Angela's way.
it was, yeah, she got in her own way, and nobody was really like willing to listen to any word that came out of Angela's mouth. So for me, I'm like, at that point, it gave me such an awareness of whoever the people that are left. The only really one that's detriment is Chemo, because he knows the game, and he's I think he's spotted or starting to look at me at that time.
Yep.
And I'm like, everybody else is just so unaware of how this game is played, and I can use that for my benefit to get me to the final two. So that's what Mackenzie showed me. It's like, oh, you're unaware of how jury works. You're unaware of how voting works. Like, it's just a lack of awareness for Big Brother that I used up until my speech.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's fairly straightforward in terms of what happens. What would you say? Because I do like this ultimately was a team effort. Like Cam also put in work with Mackenzie to make this happen. But what would you say was like the thing for you that you felt was the most effective method at getting Mackenzie to do this?
I think I won't take 100% credit for it, because Rubina was also in her ear. Kima was also in her ear. So I think I was the most influential voice in Mackenzie, but I wasn't the only, and that helped me because everybody was pretty on board. I did play a role in like having those conversations with Rubina, having those conversations with Chemo to try to fan the flame, that go talk to Leah about it. So
it's a team effort, but it doesn't happen without you, I think is the way to say it.
For sure. Once everybody was like, oh, Chelsie is like, Chelsea is down for this, let's do it. And it became like a more team thing that I led. But I think because Mackenzie was hearing everybody pretty much say the same thing, she was afraid of upsetting the house and then not being able, her biggest fear was not being able to play the next week. So for me, I really set it up to say, like, you won't have to fear if you do what the house wants. This is what the house wants. They want Leah out. You will gain respect of jury if you keep these people safe. That is what I think really got Mackenzie like, okay, I don't want to upset jury. And I'm like, well, how to please them is to get out the one person we're all saying to get out, and it's Leah. And then I kept fanning the flame of like, if roles were reversed, when Leah has an option, she is going to take you. The only person she cares about is Angela. She don't care about you. So I really fanned that flame. And I guess like Leah and Mackenzie got into it about Matt or something like that. That helped.
Rubina added that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So that go Rubina, help me out. But that fanned the flame. So, but for me, it's like, didn't let off the gas with keeping Leah as an option in the forefront. That was the most tirelessly I've ever worked in the Big Brother house was that week. And I was like, give me 3 good reasons why you're not going to take Leah out. Give me 3 good reasons. What makes you think that Leah is going to keep you safe? And the thing that I always banked back to was when Mackenzie was on the block, Leah was going to vote Mackenzie out if Angela was on the block. And that saved me. How hard I went for Mackenzie that week. I was like, Mackenzie, let's not forget, me and Cam were the reasons that you stayed safe that week. Leah was going to keep Angela, and her actions showed in how she uses the veto. She used the veto, went against her closest ally, Quinn, to keep Angela safe. So you really think that Leah's going to protect you whenever she gets a chance again? So that was like, and I believed that to be true. Now, I don't think Leah was going to take a shot the next week. I think Leah was going to take her far way further than me.
Oh, yeah.
But I still didn't believe Leah was gonna take Mackenzie to the end over Angela, and I really played that. And at that time, I was gonna take Mackenzie to the end. So I really banked on like, yo, let's not forget actions. Just a couple weeks ago, your tail was gonna be out had it not been for me advocating for you. And the person that was against you, no matter what, was Leah. That solidified. And Mackenzie's like, oh, you're right. And that was the nail in the coffin. Or the Rubina thing with Matt. That was a nail in the coffin. But I did a lot of the legwork for that.
Yes. And I like, for the record, I think unequivocally this is your move. You know, but what I found interesting is that because this is your move and the fact that you made this happen, there's one line of thinking, which is, you know, Mackenzie makes this move and it's a push too far, right? The thing you're worried about the previous week. She realizes I made a mistake and I was manipulated into doing this or pushed into doing this, and then rebels. But then there's another line of thought, which is, I think what happened and what often actually happens, which is Mackenzie does not want to acknowledge that this was wrong, right? And so in order to justify this move, she now is like even more locked in with you and the plan and like everything, like what Leah was saying, like, no, like I can trust Chelsie. Like I made the right play. I made the right move. And look at the evidence. We're making it to the end together. Like you're so wrong. Like this is just the way, like I did not make a mistake. I am not unaware of what happened. And I think this this is one of those fascinating things about watching Big Brothers, that you see this happen a lot, where like one mistake can spiral into so many more because you don't want to like admit or acknowledge the mistake. And I think that
she knew. I think she knew, like deep down it was
exactly.
She kept alluding to like, guys, please don't screw me over. Like, please don't. Did I just make the wrong decision? And I had to keep like reinforcing her. No, you're good. We got you. We're fine. This is best for your game. So it gave me like knowledge to know she does think she has regret, a little bit of regret. Like, oh, why did I do that? For me, did that make sense? So I saw that a lot in our conversations. I was like, oh shoot, she's starting to see the other side. I don't want her to clock it. So how do I keep convincing her? No, that was the best move for you. Jury will respect you for it. And I had to double down on that. But you could tell she was like, uh-oh, I think I just messed up. But then decided either go 10 toes deep with that and say my bad, or stick with me and Cam. And she decided the latter.
Yep. So then double eviction. Adria, you mentioned that this was controversial. I'm not sure with who, because I think that this is a perfectly reasonable move to make. You know, I think Angela and Chemo, they're both threats to you at this point. Rubina's a threat to you at this point. Any one of the three could leave. And I don't think that you should take the shot at Mackenzie here. You know, obviously, I mean, Cam should, but you shouldn't. So, and I think that gets proven out by the end of the season. So, perfectly great HOH, especially being put in the situation you were with Chemo winning the veto. That's kind of a rough spot to then have to pick a replacement there. But you know, it works out.
It did. But yeah, there was a lot of. Well, Mackenzie actually had controversy with me after the show. She was like, so you did have that conversation with Rubina, like in the bathroom, about taking a shot at me. I'm like, yeah. But I was lying to Rubina. I wasn't going to do that. So like, I was playing. I was in the middle playing both sides in my conversations, but I knew at the end of the day, I wasn't taking a shot at Mackenzie because I had her in my pocket. She doesn't have Leah anymore. And that's a great position for her and me. So I was lying to Rubina at that time, saying, and I was trying to get Rubina to be the one, everybody else to be the one to take the shot. I wasn't.
Yes.
I was trying to be like with the house. Yeah, of course I'm gonna take that shot. But during double eviction, that would have been the dumbest thing for me.
Which makes sense. Like you I mean, it's not like great for you if Mackenzie leaves, but like the whole point is that she's a shield for you. So like, you know, like who else is Rubina going to target? She's going to target either at that point, it was certainly going to be either you or Mackenzie. And so
100%. And
pushing
I
her on
knew,
Mackenzie makes sense. And
yeah,
Mackenzie leaves there, and that sucks. But like, you still have Cam, and now you're less of a threat without Mackenzie, hopefully. And you know, it's not like the greatest position in the world, but you know,
it wasn't the worst. But
yeah,
I wanted her to go really far with me. And she was a shield in like winning competitions, but she was also a shield in having the most competition wins. And so people would always, as long as she was there,
yeah.
with the house guests that we had left, would always view Mackenzie as the one. And she was very vocal about her wins in the house. Like, yes, I beat Tucker. Now I'm the comp beast. I'm this and I'm that. And I'm like, please keep saying that, because you're putting more of a target on your back. So keeping her around allowed me to not have to win, because either she was going to win or she was going to get targeted. So that was the best position for me to be in, is keeping her really close to me. And it can, as the game went on, it proved that. But yeah, I wasn't going to take a shot at her double eviction. I had every chance to, but I chose not to. I did want to go to the final 3 with her.
Yeah, I think you were one of the only people, if not the only person, in that double eviction HOH that wouldn't have taken a shot at her.
Everybody else would have, and I also doubled down on that as well. I'm like, I'm the only person that will take you to the final 2, and that was an accurate statement. I was the only one that would take Mackenzie to the end, so that also helped in solidifying her taking me, even at the end when I lost. So yeah.
She wins the next HOH and veto. This is pretty straightforward. Chemo and Rubina.
Yep.
Chemo leaves. She, of course, does consider taking a shot at Cam. And
Yes.
so basically the rest of the season, given the comp outcomes, is you just making sure that Cam and Mackenzie don't take each other out prematurely.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. Because I needed both of them. Once Leo was gone, and Angela on the same day, which was like chef's kiss for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can breathe. And then Chemo and Rubina being on the block was great, because I'm like, at that point, if it's Rubina, Mackenzie, and Cam and myself, I feel like either one of them, if I worked this right, would take me to the final 2. So I feel like I was in the best position with that. But yeah, Chemo and Rubina going on the and I was a little sketchy about Cam too, if I'm honest. Again, I'm not seeing the edit, I'm not seeing his conversations, but I'm seeing him lose all these competitions. And I genuinely thought
no, I forgot about that. You thought he was throwing.
I'm not joking with you. I'm not joking with you. I thought he threw BB Comics.
Why would he throw it?
because I've watched the show. At this point, he had won one competition this whole season. And I'm like, the only way for Cam to win at the end is to pull a move and say, yo, I didn't have to win, and I got to the end. And I'm an athletic guy. You know, they should have taken me out. I was a threat, blah, yada, 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 yada. So in my head, I'm thinking of all the ways Cam would beat me and all the ways Mackenzie would beat me. And I'm like, okay, Cam's argument would be I didn't have to win, and I got to the end. And so I'm like, is he throwing these comps? And then when I heard he took breaks during BB comment, not even when I heard that, when I saw that board.
Why would he tell you he took breaks if he was trying to secretly throw?
I don't know. I was in my head. When I saw Mackenzie, I really thought I won that competition. Did they show my time in the edit?
I think they did.
I can't remember what my time.
I think they showed the top 3 times.
Okay, so Mackenzie and I were really close, and I knew I busted through that competition fairly fast. They wouldn't give me my time of how quickly I went through that. But then
Maybe they didn't. Yeah, I don't know.
But when I saw Chemo's name up there next to us and not Cam, I was livid. I said, now there's no way. So I was already clocked. Okay, so did Cam had to have thrown that because he's not in the top 3, and that's next to Chemo and Rubina. And I thought Rubina would even be if Rubina was even on that board and not Cam, I would have been okay with that. But the fact that it was Chemo, I was like, okay, this is sketchy. Then we go inside.
You should watch. Sorry to interrupt. You should watch Rubina competing in that thing. The drop was just so much bigger for her. It was brutal.
I felt bad for that. Like they should have lowered the zip line for her. I like seriously, when I saw, okay, this is when I knew something was up. When Chemo, Cam, and Rubina come inside the house after that competition, and their hands are all bloody and jacked up. And Mackenzie and I are like, who did y'all
How many times did you?
How many times did you guys go? Oh my God. So so Cam was like, yeah, I took a couple breaks. I wanted the zip line maybe more than 50 times. I was like, he's throwing these because there's no way he should have won the zip line more than 50 times. There's only 16 comics. If we do the math is not mathing. So, and then when he was saying he was taking breaks, I was lit. When I tell you I was mad, and we got into it. I think they aired it in the storage room. I'm like, are you throwing this or are you genuinely that bad? Come to find out he was genuinely trying. But that was crazy to me. And I did start to question, like, is he throwing these and is this part of his strategy now? And if it is, I have something to be a little bit worried about. But he wasn't. So it worked out. But Mackenzie did consider it. And at that point, I was just like, at this point, do whatever you want to do. I'm not making the move, but he could be throwing this. And if he is, I'm going to be pissed.
Well, you do kind of, yeah, you do kind of give him a heads up, like, hey, you should probably talk to Mackenzie, which is key because he eventually convinces her to not put himself on the
I
block.
do. And yes, thank you for acknowledging that. Because, like, at the end of the day, I did, as frustrated as I was with Cam, him going home wasn't smart for me. And so I gave him the heads up in the storage room, like, she is considering it. As he's stretching his back out because he's tired from that competition. It's so crazy to me. I will never let him live that down. And then some of my friends made me watch the eye candy competition where he was stacking with the ice cream cone.
Oh my God.
Yes, saw that. And I talked about
watching that, you'd be understanding. It'd be understandable to think he was
I just saw there's like a meme. It's literally Cam holding the ice cream cone. I said, now Cameron Sullivan Brown, I can't defend you anymore, baby. I really can't. So, but yeah, her keeping my job that week was keep Cam off the block, because she was considering it, and I knew Chemo or Rubina had to be gone, one of them. And with one of them were gone, I pretty much had a clear path to a win. And that's how that week went.
Yep. And then the following week you win Final Four HOH. And this is actually, you're in one of these great situations, or at least theoretically great, because who knows what actually would have happened. But like Mackenzie winning the Final 5 HOH puts you in a spot. I think of it as the Nicole Franzel spot because oh God, what's his name? Her guy at the time, showman's guy. His name I'm forgetting.
Nicole's?
Yeah, it doesn't matter, but he wins the Final 5 HOH, which guarantees her Final 3 because the only way for him to be safe is if he wins the Final 4 veto. He's never evicting her. And he will always be evicted over her. And so similar situation with you here. Mackenzie winning Final 5 means that you are pretty locked into Final 3 because she should be evicted over you in any circumstance. And the only way she's immune is if she's the sole vote and she's not voting you out. Now, what would Chemo or Rubina actually do there? We'd have to ask them. There was a little bit of talk, but I think generally we can say that you were pretty much locked in. But you win that Final 4 HOH anyway. And then the Final 4 veto was very close. But Cam the choke artist.
You can't.
He gets the
make this up anymore. You can't. He had 3. He only had 1 strike to her.
I think he hadn't lost
any. 0.
And then everyone else was at 1.
And had I thought that he was gonna, I probably would have stayed in that competition because I threw that one because I didn't want to be the sole vote to evict. I was thinking a jury at that time. So I'm like, okay, as Rubina's the only one that might consider me, so I'm gonna stay in as so long as Rubina's out. And that's exactly what I did. And I was just chilling from there. But I was like, Cam, this is one that you should have won. And who's to say what, Cam? I think he probably would have taken Mackenzie out, to be honest.
That's what he was saying he was going to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So, which wasn't necessarily bad for me, because I had confidence in beating Rubina and in any type of HOH comp at the end. And I knew Cam was going to take me. So I felt like either way it went, I was in a good position, but it would have been more smooth sailing for Cam to win that veto. And he didn't. And I was like, okay.
I think like I'd have to talk to Cam. My understanding of his general endgame plan was he wanted to evict Mackenzie there and then he felt like he'd have a shot against you because he's actually made some kind of big play, which
Yeah,
is
that was
taking out
going to be his
Mackenzie.
last
And
opportunity.
then once he lost that comp, I feel like he kind of was like, I've lost the game.
I do think he felt that as well. And I think if he would have won the final HOH comps, like part 1 and part 3, he could have redeemed himself. And it's like, yo, I haven't won since day 45. And then I won when I needed to, which is the very end. And then he gets to choose who comes to the end. So I just think, and that goes back to like, and Cam will be finally saying this, but lack of awareness of the game. Because you could spin the block however you want. You can formulate whatever story you want to tell jury. And he could have won those last 2 HOHs, but I just don't. I think his confidence was a little shot.
Yeah. I mean, from what Quinn said, it was probably going to be too little, too late, regardless.
Too late, regardless. Yeah. Well, Quinn was going hard for me and jury. I heard, which I appreciate. But yeah, his head was out of the game after that last veto. It was bad.
There were definitely, it didn't feel like, I mean, I think we all thought he probably, so basically the conversation at the end of the game was basically since Quinn left and then Leah didn't take the shot, it was like, okay, how does Chelsie lose became the analysis, because how you won is like everything else. And so for a little while, it seemed like Cam was flirting with the idea of, what if I took Chemo or Rabina to the end?
Yeah.
And there was like some hints here and there from conversations in the house and from diary rooms of like, I might be willing to cut Chelsie. I might be willing to make that move. Now, right after getting out, he was saying I was taking Chelsie, and I believe that. Like, and so, I don't think it was ever too much in question, but that was definitely like something that we were talking about at the time. Like, oh, is this the only way that Chelsie loses the game? Is if
and
he
like
maybe wins something and maybe makes that move?
Which I don't think we were riding with each other since day 2, and like.
Yeah.
And I think retrospectively, he's like, I protected him a lot throughout the game. So I don't think he would have done it. I flirted with that idea as well in the house when he was fighting so hard to keep Chemo over Rowena. And I'm like, you were so mad at me 2 weeks ago for keeping Chemo, like pissed at, like lacked trust in me for keeping Chemo. And I didn't keep Chemo to intentionally hurt Cam's game. And he thought that happened. So I'm like, why do you want Chemo here? And I was like, that benefits Cam's game actually to keep Chemo here. So I clocked the idea of like, he might flirt with that, but he and I were too deep in like playing the game together for so long. We were the longest, standing alliance since, or people that were working together really since day 2. So I knew he wasn't going to do it. But for me, the way I was going to lose was Mackenzie taking Cam to the end.
Well, that's the funny thing, is that like we were seeing Cam flirt with the idea, and I think we focused on Cam because from our perspective, what we were able to see, there was never any chance Mackenzie was doing anything different. Like, she never even flirted with the idea of not taking
the idea. Got it. That makes sense. She was going to take me to the end for a minute. Yeah, especially after Leah. You're right. I haven't seen it, so I don't know like how people are like.
No, I mean, totally understandable that you wouldn't know that, but yeah,
I would have.
We see the private moments, and like, there's never like, you can usually tell if somebody's thinking about something, and it just never seemed like she even thought about it.
And for me on my end, I got like dragged through the mud for like, oh, Mackenzie was so loyal to you, but you weren't loyal to her, and all these things, and which people can have their own opinion. I don't really care about that, but in my head, as a strategic, logical player, I'm like, Mackenzie had the guts to get one of her closest allies out of Leah. So who's to say that she's not going to make that move again and get me out? So that was like, I didn't have full 100% confidence that Mackenzie wasn't going to. Literally, when that last HOH happened, part 3, and she won, I was nervous because her speech was like, last week I did something, I made a decision with my heart, and I thought she was going to say, but this week, I'm going to make a decision with my head. I thought she was going to say, and you know what? I would have been like, great move. I wouldn't have been mad. I would have been sad. But it's the game. I would have applauded her, and I would have voted for her to win. So that's what I would have done. That would have been the move. So I was never fully 100% confident because she got Leah out. And it took some convincing, but she got her out. So I'm like, she could do this. $750,000 in line, she could get me out. I was nervous. I was not fully locked in expect the unexpected. I had that in my head all season. So yeah, I wasn't seeing her DRs or how she didn't even flirt with the idea. All I had to chew on was she got Leah out, she will do it again. And that's what led me to be kind of cutthroat in towards the end.
Yeah. Couple more things I wanted to bring up. Your HOH at Final Four, you choose to nominate Cam and Mackenzie. I loved that play. Not putting Rubina up, because
Yeah.
why choose between the two and show any kind of favoritism?
Yep.
I think it
That
made a
was
lot of sense.
Yep, that was my strat. I don't want to show my cards on who I would really go to the final two with. They both offered, so that was easy. And then in the event Rubina happens to pull out a win, I can use, hey, I could have put you up, but I put two of these people up. So I felt like that was the smartest move for me to protect me on all fronts to get to the final three and final two. So that was the only option in my mind. Glad they offered, but I was still gonna find a way to convince them like this needs to happen.
Yeah. Like it's Final Four. The nominations don't matter. It's a great move to protect hide our thing.
Yeah.
Then Final Three, especially once Cam loses part two, you're doing a lot of, we know it's unnecessary because you're winning anyway, but like great work that turns out to be unnecessary, but like is good. I love to see this kind of stuff because you don't know what the jury's thinking. You haven't talked to them in 2 months, most of them. And so you're doing everything you can to make sure that Mackenzie's going to be bad at talking to the jury and that you're going to be good at talking to the jury.
Yeah.
And I wish we saw more of this. This is something that Dan did a lot in his season. So very fun to see more of it. Just and really taking full advantage, as we've talked about, of the fact that Mackenzie just doesn't know how it even works or like what's normal or what to expect. And so I think we talked about this in your initial X interview, but like my favorite one was like, oh yeah, like your game speaks for itself. You don't even need a speech. I'm not preparing a speech. Meanwhile, you've been practicing for days.
Here's where my knowledge of or my awareness of their knowledge of the game, it came into play and benefited me because I had clocked weeks before, like a lot of these people are unaware of Big Brother. So and then that last 2 weeks or week and a half, Mackenzie was very verbal of like, hey, my game speaks for itself. I'm the comp beast. And she really spoke in a way where she was just like, she multiple times was like, I can't believe I'm going to be the youngest woman on Big Brother to win. So she spoke as in a matter of fact, like as if she thought competitions was going to be the thing that got her to win. So I just allowed her to continue to believe that. Yeah, sure. And then Cam helped unintentionally because Cam and I was trying to see where the jury lied or where he thought the jury lied. So I'm like starting to have conversations with Cam of like, if it's me and Mackenzie at the end, where do you think jury lies? And I'm also hinting to him, like, I'm taking her to the end. So he told me, he was like, yeah, I don't even think you need to do a speech, like that you have the jury in your back pocket. Like, I don't think you need to prepare. And then he said the speeches don't mean anything. So both of them are like unaware that these speeches could really shift some perspectives in jury. So
yeah, I mean, they normally don't, but it's like you should still do everything you can.
Yes, but in my mind, with our jury, like I still believe, bar like Quinn and Quinn and like Chemo, who are aware of the game, this was a little bit more of like an emotional jury who were easily swayed in with words. So I did feel with this specific jury, like they may be solidified on something, but then as asking questions and having more conversations, finally, it could lead them to be like this because that's how the season kind of like played out. So for me, I'm like, this speech means everything, especially because she had 11. If I did the math, like if she would have her 11 competitions to my 6, how do I convince them that still yet I should win this game? So yeah, I did a lot of studying, but also allowed Cam and allowed Mackenzie to believe that speeches mean nothing, and allowed Mackenzie to believe, yeah, you're a comp beast. Like, you're winning. So yeah, she started that conversation. I added gas to the fire.
Mm-hmm. How annoyed are you that you didn't win the final 3 HOH and break the HOH record?
So when I found out all I had to do was win that competition to beat the HOH record, I was so livid. I was like, because I really at that time I was just like, if I lose, I still feel like I'm fine. Iffy, but I feel like my conversation with Mackenzie that night before really was just like solidified she would take me no matter what happened. And as we were walking up, but that's what y'all didn't see. We were walking up to compete during like a commercial break. And we're walking up, and Mackenzie's like, you better not flip on me because I'm not flipping on you. And I'm like, Mackenzie, if I win this, I'm taking you to the final two. You need to trust me on this. So we're talking before we compete. So I knew like I was going to be fine. Like we're good. But I was so pissed. I could have broke the all-time record by one question, just one question. And I had the right answer in my hand. And at the last minute, I was like, no, it doesn't feel right. And I changed it.
You really snuck up on it too, because your wins were so spread out, and one of them was like a quick double eviction win that it was like all of a sudden I was like, hold on, Chelsie might be about to break the all-time HOH record that's like, stood since the beginning of time, basically.
That's the only reason I would go back on Big Brother. Is to try to break that record. I was so upset, but like once I won unanimously, I was like, I'll take the.
I got enough. All right, fine.
I'm okay. I'll let that slide. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else from this end game? Anything else that you wanted to bring up?
Not really. I was shocked. I would say I was shocked about the unanimous vote at the end. Very, very shocked with mostly Angela and Leah and the way they voted, especially with Angela's question and how she was acting towards me during the jury questions. I was like, this might not be going well for me. I that's why I pushed into high gear with my speech, because I felt like I was iffy about the jury. So the unanimous vote was honestly a surprise, and like I'm so grateful. I would just say like this was, I think, one of the hardest seasons of Big Brother to play because of the twist that was in mine, and half of the players being recruits. This was an unorthodox. I had to play Big Brother in a way that wasn't really played before. Like my strategy was played before, but I was put in a situation. 8 recruits is crazy, and then the arena is crazy.
What I quickly want to say is that, like, obviously, when it comes to like judging gameplay, stuff like that, first of all, it's all subjective. But like, but what I think is interesting about like because one of the things I'm sure you've heard is like this was a season of questionable talent sometimes, right? Yeah. But I think that like what can go unrecognized in that argument is that like while yes, there were a lot of players that like self-imploded, like that doesn't necessarily make it an easier game for a player like you to navigate, because yeah, some people are taking themselves out, but like it's still a minefield, and some players are self-imploding in a way that hurts you, like for instance Quinn. Like it's not necessarily, I really don't think the argument of competition is a good one for that reason. For many others, considering like, I think that a very good player will often make other people look especially bad, and things like that. And so just I was thinking about that, like that image of like a minefield and how you really had to navigate that minefield this season, because
and I did. I saw a lot of that. I saw a lot of those comments where it's like, well, it was easy for Chelsie because the players were not that great. And I'm just like, well, we also have to consider the argument or the fact that a lot of these games were very like equitable. Like, it was pretty much an even level playing field for any player in Big Brother this season, bar like 2 or 3 physical competitions. It was anybody's game. So For me, it's like, not to defend my game because I don't need to. I won. I don't have to defend it. But to bring up as that argument of like, it was easy win. But like at the same time, anybody could have won due to the type of competitions that were being played. Angela won 2 HOHs and a veto, I think. Angela, like a type of player in previous seasons like her, would not be winning multiple competitions like that. And she won more competitions than a lot of people in the house. So I'll, like anybody, the power could have shifted any week because of the type of competitions that we played. So for that, I would be like, yeah, there were some like players that didn't know how to play the game, but it presented new challenges for me as a Big Brother player who had studied Big Brother one way. And then you bring 7, 8 recruits on top of a arena twist where they were you had the ability to put up 4 people in 1 week. Is just unorthodox Big Brother. And I had to navigate that and to not touch the block. Only touch the block really twice the whole season. It's like, yeah, the players may have been bad, but it took a lot of, my brain didn't shut off for 90 days. I was in my head for 90 days straight, thinking and strategizing. So it may look like an easy win for other people. Let me just say it was difficult. That was not an easy task for me. I am still exhausted from the way I played Big Brother. So it was very difficult. Nonetheless, like we had an amazing cast, great people. Big Brother did an amazing job at forcing us to expect the unexpected each week. They did a phenomenal job at that. So grateful at the season that we had, and grateful that I won, and grateful jury voted for me to win. So great season. I feel like it's easy for me to say because I won, but like I'm sure the viewers ate this up with how interesting it was. So
it really did feel like a return to form in many ways between the competitions, the twist that was actually good, and the gameplay, which was both exciting and masterful on 2 different ends of the spectrum, right? So very fun, very fun. It did definitely, like once you locked in, there's not as much to talk about for sure.
I can't. I still have to watch. Brooklyn's like, you need to watch the edit, Chelsie. Like it's in your favor. But when you're living it, you don't see any of that. And also, Mackenzie was very adamant, like that me and Kim were not really on the show because she was like, I'm in the DR all the time, and you guys are rarely there. And so I'm like, well, dang, am I on the show? And like, is she really the mastermind behind this? So when I get out and see I was that person, I'm shocked. Like it may have been very clear to y'all, but I was dying, like trying to make sure I won that game. So I can't wait to watch back and really see how that was cut and really see the influence that I had. I'm not trying to be naive or like humble. I really don't know the edit. So
yeah, I mean, it's kind of like if you were in like a swimming race and you're just like all out final sprint, like just in the zone, you have no idea where anyone is, and then you finally finish and you look behind you and like nobody's even there. Like it's like wait, I was
when I got on the block, I was locked in, like every week locked in, and I wasn't looking really to my left or to my right about how other people are perceived. I was just like, how do I win? And so I was shocked to see the perception of my game, especially from BB alum, and how they viewed like BB alum, like legends, how they viewed the game. I was shocked. I'm still shocked. I have to go back and watch. I will do that. I should have done that before talking to you, but I will go back and watch to see how that is. But I'm shocked. I'm honored. So cool. I was just trying to make it past week 1. I didn't even think win, let alone breaking some records along the way. So that's cool. I'm grateful. Like, what a dream for a Big Brother fan.
Yeah. Anything else? Any updates from the postseason? Like, what's life like now?
Life is great. Trying to navigate the intricacies of like going back into my normal life. It's not really normal anymore, but trying to like go back into daily habits has been difficult for me. But me and the house guests, we still keep in touch. We're having so much fun outside the house. I don't know what's next. I'm thinking maybe a podcast in the future, doing a meet and greet this upcoming week. So getting to really connect with the Big Brother fan base, because they are really ride or die, is my priority. How do I connect with the fan base and some alum and really continue to build this family is just a dream. So I'm trying to soak that in as much as possible until I get to watch next season and see who they bring on. So yeah, just riding the wave of winning this game and trying to enjoy it as much as I can.
Yeah. I love asking winners this. I think I kind of a little bit asked you before, but now that you've had a little bit of time, especially you, where do you stand? You know, a lot of people after your winner were like, we got to talk about winner rankings. You know, we got to do it. What is your stance?
Like where I stand.
Where do you stand, Chelsie? Where do you stand on the list?
That's messy, but I'm gonna answer. Okay, I will give myself top 10. Top 10.
Oh, that's modest.
I've heard a lot of top 5s, a lot of top 3s for sure. That's like pretty insane. Which I'm on. I'm not trying to be humble, but like I need to go watch my game.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
I need to go watch my game. I need to go I need to go see my game versus my housemates, and then my ranking may change. But I have not watched me. I've only played. So
yeah, it is also like, you know, it's hard to judge your own game versus like your own game that you lived versus an edited version of a game that you watched.
And I watched.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
that's what I learned. The watching Big Brother is very different than playing it. And one thing I part of the season, it was Janky World. The only time I questioned why I went on the show, I was like, why didn't I just decide to be a fan and continue watching? Because
that's funny because I had the opposite reaction. I was watching Janky World and I was like, why am I watching the show?
It was so terrible.
It was miserable to watch. The audio quality was terrible. You were just sitting around doing nothing all day.
Well, let me tell you. Well, yes, we were doing nothing because we were dying. And they kept that tarp over us. We couldn't breathe. It was 200 degrees. I felt like I was going to pass out and die. All that stuff. But watching it is very different than playing it. So it's hard for me to know. Because what could look like an easy win, as I watch the edit, there's so many things that go on behind the scenes that push somebody to win, like a Derek or like a Dan or like any of these other players who had dominant games. I don't know how they got there. I didn't watch the live feeds and all that. So I'd safely give myself top 10. I need to go watch me. And then I'll be able to more equally evaluate my game. So top 10. And I'm going to leave it at that before I get dragged.
Well, thank you so much for giving me so much of your time.
Yes.
We had said roughly 2.5 hours, and now we're approaching 4. Listen, that's the trap of the deep dive, is that hopefully once we get to 2.5 hours, you're having so much fun that
I'm enjoying it. I had so much fun. Hey, you're phenomenal. The way that you break down the game, the way you evaluate Big Brother, the way that you dissect it, the questions that you ask are just phenomenal. So thank you for what you do. It really is like, there's some people I talk to where I'm like, I don't want to talk about my traumatic experience, Big Brother. But it is truly a joy. That's why we went 4 hours instead of 2.5. I had so much fun. So thank you for what you do. And thank you for allowing me to come and just share my thoughts of the game.
Thank you. You know, I do know it is a traumatic experience, so I really do try my best to provide as welcoming a space as possible for this deep dive therapy session, which it sometimes a little bit is. I think
it was therapeutic. I appreciate it. Even listening to Quinn, as much as it drove me crazy, it was therapeutic to listen to him. So thank you for what you do. As a Big Brother fan, I'm still geeking out about like being able to talk to somebody like you. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for talking to me. It's always a pleasure to talk to players like you. And again, thank you for giving me so much of your time. Well, what are you up to? Where can people find you?
Yeah,
where should they look for you?
Y'all can find me in Rancho Cucamonga because y'all know I rep 909 hard. So Rancho Cucamonga, but on all streaming platforms, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that at Chelsie Baham, my first and last name. And I try as much as I can to keep people updated on my life and involved in what I'm doing. So find me online, connect with me online. And yeah, let's be family. Oh, let me set the record straight. This is the last thing. Julie is not my real auntie, okay? So the fact that I got dragged for that. People thinking the game was rigged because she was my aunt.
No, I didn't even see that.
Yes. There's art, like Julie even had to clarify, by the way, I'm not her real aunt. She had to clarify it because she saw. So let me say that was a term of endearment. I love Julie. I was like, how do I stand out and make, because everybody's like, Julie, you look so nice. For me, I'm like, how do I make Julie feel loved for being an iconic host? And so for me, I called Big Brother Uncle BB. So I was like, okay, let me just call Julie Auntie Julie. And it just kind of stuck. So she's not my real aunt. And I leave with that because I was going to say, y'all are now my cousins. This is just what we did. Like, I got cousins everywhere. So y'all are, if you want, we are family. Connect with me online. And yeah, cousins for life. 909. Let's go.
I am desperate to hear from the person who got to the 3 hour and 53-minute mark of this podcast, who just went, wait, she's not her aunt?
Watch, you will get somebody that's like, oh my God. And I'm just like, just look. Like, you know, yeah, so I got rained with like, oh, I knew there was something off. Julie's her aunt. I'm like, are you? This is what I'm getting dragged for. Love that for me.
Oh,
So,
that's great.
Drag you straight. What a great way to end this podcast.
What a great way to end it. Well, of course, we'll have plenty of other off-season content throughout the year as we approach the next season of Big Brother here at RHAP. In the meantime, you can find some of the other podcasts I do. I talk about scripted shows on the Tastemakers over at We Know Scripted TV, and lots of other shows we cover. We've been talking about The Summit lately, which is a weird show.
So crazy. Would never do it. Nope.
And you can always find me over on Twitch, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong, watching Survivor Live, Big Brother when it's on, and talking about various other things. So come and find me over there. All right, that is it then. That is what we have for you for the Chelsie deep dive. Thank you all so much for joining us if you made it all the way to the end, and we will see all of you next time.
Bye, guys.